Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman, and this is a very special Dissident Dispatch. If it's your first time at the channel, I hope you will consider subscribing to be notified when I make more content like this. Dissident Dispatch is a show I try to do at least twice a month, if not every week. On a Monday evening, I will bring you topics that are of a dissident nature. In other words, I'm going to speak out against some things that are becoming mainstream and commonplace in education in particular. And I bring you sort of intel or information from different areas of concern where education is concerned. And sometimes I bring on guests who can speak to elements of these things that I think are relevant and you may not necessarily realize are connected. Tonight is no exception to that. Tonight's guest, Ooana Trien, is a graduate of Tish School of the Arts with a concentration in experimental and classical theater. She's the daughter of a Hungarian mother and survivor of both Hitler and Stalin, her mom, whose father, a former nobleman, died in Stalin's Romanian Gulag, otherwise known as the, I'm going to get this wrong, Pitesti Prison. I think she'll correct me, I'm sure. It was an experiment, that prison. And it was an experiment to prove that human beings were nothing more than reactive meat. So this is the topic we're going to discuss tonight is very near and dear to her heart, both as an artist and as a child of people who suffered under totalitarian regimes. She's also the artistic director of Radio Orchid, whose latest production of The Rhinoceros by Eugene Ionesco will be premiering June 15th through June 17th in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we're going to give you some information about that during the show and towards the end of the show. And I hope you will, if you're in the area, you'll be able to go. If not, I hope you'll be able to contribute to her efforts because this is a very important production. Just to give you a little insight into what we're talking about tonight, because it's going to be a little different. I talk a lot about SEL on this channel, social emotional learning. And so many people say, well, what is that? And why does it matter? And isn't it just learning social skills and character? Well, you'd think, but it isn't. It's so much more than that. And until recently, I thought it really just had a political thing going on, that there was an undercurrent that was political. I didn't realize how the focus of social emotional learning is not just on our children, it's on our entire culture. I mean, I knew there was a cultural revolution going on, but I didn't realize how much it impacted the arts and how much art is impacting it. In other words, how we're just surrounded by these ideas. So Ooana's going to talk to us about that, and we're going to talk about the Stalinist origins of this. And then we're going to look at some ways that that is represented. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to teach her a little about SEL. This is a little new to her. So there's going to be interaction. So she's going to talk about what she knows. I'm going to talk about what I know, and we're going to point out to you, the audience, how these things intersect. So without further ado, please welcome Ooana Trien. Hello.
Hey, Deb. I'm really excited to be here.
I know I mangled the prison name. So what is it?
Oh, no, it's Pitesti Prison. You actually got it pretty much
Prison.
right.
Okay, I got it fairly close.
Yeah, and so it's it's a rather unpleasant story.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, why don't we start by having you explain to the audience how it was that you and I got started talking about this topic of SocRealism, socialist realism, pretty much this week, yesterday. We just started back and forth talking about it, and you started sharing some information with me, and I did put together a little presentation of your screenshots so we can speak to that.
Great.
But let's just intro it. Like, how did this conversation begin so they understand why we ended up here tonight?
Well, I would say that one thing that I find really fascinating about this stuff is that as much as I may have not been familiar with the term itself, social emotional learning, I'm still familiar with it. It's a fascinating thing because I think that these things are they've not remade the wheel. They're doing the same thing that they've done since the onset of this. I mean, one of the things I printed out for us is I I pulled this thing up by Hannah Arendt, right? And she says, totalitarianism begins in contempt for what you have. The second step is the notion things must change, no matter how. Anything is better than what we have. Totalitarian rulers organize this kind of mass sentiment, and by organizing it, articulate it, and by articulating it, make the people somehow love it. And she said that in an interview with Roger Herrera in 1973. And she's the author of Eichmann in Jerusalem.
Right.
And so I think that when you and I have we've been following each other on Twitter for a long time. And I think we really kind of came together over the last 3 years with a similar sentiment that, totalitarian creep was happening. And I've now concluded that we are living in what Václav Havel calls a post-totalitarian society. That doesn't mean after totalitarianism. It means once totalitarianism has embedded itself, and that it's very different than a dictatorship, remarkably so. And if you look back at what Hannah had said about things like the banality of evil, and you go back further, and I was blown away even listening to what James Lindsay was recently saying about Mao. And there was a point in it, he said, that this stuff is too embedded into everything for us to dismantle it. That the only way is to wait it out and prove it to be the joke that it is and the sad, just rip it apart. I don't entirely agree, but I agree that our institutions are not set up or capable of doing what needs to be done to dismantle it now that it's here, but that's because of the nature of a post-totalitarian system, which Václav Havel addresses, which I hope we address a little bit more specifically. Yes. But I'd say that social emotional learning, or CRT, or queer theory, or critical, every single one of them,
right,
starting all the way back,
right,
they all, I believe, began with actually socialist realism. That's my sense of these things, because, and I think that's what I jumped on and shared with you, and we were both kind of twirling in this, right? Kind of saying, oh my gosh, because I think there's a simple way of looking at this, that once you look at it through this lens of socialist realism, and you start to see where it is, it's much easier to artfully, and I don't only mean, when I say artfully, I don't mean necessarily as an artist in the traditional sense we use the term today, because it's not what it means, right? I mean, there's an art to medicine. There's an art to politics. There's an art to statesmanship. There's an art to discourse. There's an art to life, one might say, right?
Right.
And when you look at it through that lens, and you see where it's draping this delusional illusion across our entire culture, all you need to do is just pull back that drape and reject it over and over again, right?
Right.
But also, it allows you to recognize prior. So there was something that struck me today, actually. This happened on Twitter, and I wanted to mention it to you. We're at a point, I think, where by its very nature, the goal of socialist realism is to destroy reality in every way, because it's not reality. And we can talk about this with, the work of, Milos's introduction to On Totalitarian by Abram Tertz.
Mm-hmm.
Or when you break down what it is. When you are creating repeatedly a way of propping up ideology, which is just a specious way of looking at the world, and you take that, you create what appears to be just a world of illusion, a world of untruth. Now, whether or not that's true doesn't matter. The moment that people believe that nothing is true, that nothing is real, that nothing has any authenticity to it at all, they've won. It doesn't need to be true.
Right. Right.
So that's one of the things that I think that, like, when I've said this before, while I agree that if we just went institution by institution, moment by moment, university by university, school by school, and tried to repair this,
Right.
we would be dead before it happened, of old age. It wouldn't
Right. I
happen.
mean, it would take too
Take
long.
too long. But there's a magic that comes from the arts. It's that special sauce. It's
Right.
an alchemy in the best way, right? It's
Right.
or you can look at it like when you're making a great dish, it's the
Right.
secret ingredient.
Right.
Or it's the difference between cooking on a gas stove and an electric one,
Right.
right?
I have to laugh, but not really laugh. A friend of mine was in a tornado last night and has no electricity and now cannot cook. And she said, I would kill for that gas stove right now. But I mean,
Tell her to go out. You know what you got to do?
what,
Go out and get a Coleman, just
I know the little
grill
propane,
with a little propane. Yep. Or
but there's
or just
something
go out
there-
and get a chimney and like do it old school, like shove it out.
But there's something there, though. You know,
Yes,
you
there
just
is.
talked about the difference between the gas stove and the electric, and part of that difference is control in the hands of the individual.
And also, it goes back. So, what's his name? There was this amazing. I'm not going to pick up my phone and look at it because I'm going to follow the suggestion of Eric Weinstein and Douglas Murray once did this great portal where they talked about how if you have to look something up on the internet, you can't pull it out quite the same way. But I feel badly because I cannot remember the guy who tweeted. I was terrible with names. If you go on Twitter and you search for it, he basically said, find something, anything to be fundamentalist about, to lash yourself to.
Right.
Doesn't matter what it is. It could be classical herbalism. And because soon there's going to be no truth. And this is the thing, that everything's going to appear like it's a delusion. Everything's going to appear like it's an illusion. He calls it a phantasmagoria, which I love that he used that word because that's actually a word from my world. A phantasmagoria. So if you can stabilize yourself on something, right? And some of this is basics. Earth, air, fire, water. This
Right.
is basic stuff. You know, it's almost like they think they're Prometheus, denying us fire. It's
Right.
ridiculous. And,
Right.
and that if we go back to this very basic stuff and saying like, listen, you cannot, excuse me for buttoning up here. I have a bird and my bird likes to undress me.
And clean your teeth, apparently.
And clean my teeth. Yes,
I saw that. That was funny.
Yeah. I've got.
She
She's
has a
like she
bird
likes to
and she
floss.
posted it cleaning her teeth.
It was the first time she had done that too. I was like, "What is happening here?"
Yeah.
She
It's
literally.
not real. It's an illusion. She's not really doing it.
She's not really doing. Well, actually, no.
She's not really a bird.
No,
she's
she is a bird.
transhuman.
Nope.
Sorry.
It's all good. But that's actually a really good point. If everything is experienced through a human consciousness, right? We are not designed. I mean, for one thing, as much as I'm a writer, I love to write. But writing is one of our newest forms of communication. We have to have body language. You have to have those microaggressions. Microaggressions are real. Microaggressions are microexpressions weaponized, basically. That's like the idea of it. You follow what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
And sometimes I think it's really simple. Sometimes I think we've actually that we've entered into their world. It's a world of theory and this world of not even ideas, but concepts, not really flushed out, I call a lot of these people cybersexuals because they don't seem to live in a world that is like, it's not, it. So what is real?
Right.
This whole simulation theory, oh dear God. I mean, are you kidding me? I used to be a game designer. I'm a total geek. I love science fiction. No. If you're getting in that world, that is called beginning of potential psychosis. Take a walk, go to the beach, walk down the street, get your feet on the ground. I don't care where you are. Stand up and feel your feet on the ground. Because it's a way of telling us exactly what socialist realism does. Think
Well,
about it.
and isn't it one of the questions I'm sure that's coming up already in the audience is, okay, first of all, you guys are way over my head. So we'll ground you a little bit in a minute. But also, why? I get this question all the time. They're like, all right, let's say I go with you guys down this little path that, there's this thing called social realism, that the idea is to have us living in a delusion or having us not believe that anything is concrete, that anything is real.
Including
And,
yourself.
including yourself, like maybe I'm a simulation, maybe I only exist insofar as I decide what I am, and I can just like make it up as I go along, and
Or
everybody
worse
else
than
is
that. Worse than that. Remember, when we get there, and I'll just say this one part now, I'll kind of preview it. The hero has to be toil, Toil, and the toiler is unthinkable outside the collective.
right. And that, if you're wondering what the frame of reference
It's
is, I
from
did take
the other book, not this one. The first one is it's from this one, the one
it's
that has
from
this.
this one, or it's right here,
Yes.
The Art Under
So
Stalin. So I just pulled this up for you guys to see what we're talking about. There is actually a book. And this book, Art Under Stalin, talks about socialist realism, SocRealism, what Juan is talking about. And it talks about how Stalin, wanted to create this particular art form, the purpose of which, I'm going to just read this little section here. It says the theory of socialist realism, elaborated during the 1930s, sought intellectual roots. This search led to the publication of a number of books in the second half of the decade. Marx and Engels in 1937, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then it says a precedent for socialist realism was discovered in Engels' requirement of a tendentious art devoted to the workers' cause. Forebears were discovered in the optimistic fiction of
Maxim.
Maxim Gorky. Himself had quite a lot to say. Oh, wait, no, sorry. His novel Mother, 1906, was deemed a particular exemplum. Gorky himself had quite a lot to say about socialist realism. He stated, now this is where I want you guys to tune in. This is what she's saying. He stated that the hero of socialist realism would be toil. Notice it's a capital T. And that the toiler would be unthinkable outside the collective. Here's the key. And this is what we're going to relate to social emotional learning. Individualism, he called bankrupt, decrepit, and mercilessly zoological. Like Zadnov, he required artists to look at the present day from the point of view of an assured glorious future. Does that sound familiar? An assured glorious future today has no relevance except for the assured glorious future from the height of the great goals of the future. Most famously, he asserted that the artist should be both midwife and grave digger. Think decolonization, think we got to toss out the classics, gravedigger, that he should bury everything harmful to people, which is basically anything they point at that they don't like, harmful even when they like it. In other words, the artist was called upon not only to create a new art, but to exterminate the pernicious elements in the old.
He goes on, and I think this is a vital part when it comes to what we hear about when it comes to education, right? Because
Exactly.
one of the keys here, I think people need to understand in the history of the Soviet Union, right, is, people thought that Marx himself thought that the revolution would happen in Britain or in Germany, and it did not. It happened in Russia, and it happened in China. But why? Well, one of the reasons, and this is something I find fascinating. So my mother, who grew up under the system, she remarked a lot to me that what's so different today is that back then they wanted an educated populace. They wanted people who could do, if you kind of look at what's happening in China now, and people point to TikTok and how all the Chinese are able to do this and this and this, they want to prove the superiority of their system over our system. Okay? Back then, that meant being competitive, getting to a point where you could be the best at it, whether that was the Olympics and sport. Look what they're doing to sport now.
Mm-hmm.
Women's sport. That doesn't just destroy it. They utilize identity politics not because there is a moral reason, but because it is a way of stating what socialist realist art as a theology and a philosophy aims to do, which I think is expounded on in that other piece. But here, when he talks about the elements of it, right? And I think then once you break this down, if you go back to the other one, and he explains, and this book is from the 1990s, That book. But here he says, remember, to go back to where we were a second ago for just a moment,
Oh, sure.
he says, the qualities Lenin desired in art, its narodnost, or orientation toward the people. Now, what does it mean by people? James Lindsay just talked about this when he discussed Mao. People does not mean the people. It means the
No.
people who are part of the unity which agree with, and we'll get to that in a moment. It's ideanost, or ideological content. It's klassavost, or class content, were isolated as the essential characteristics of socialist realism. But most important of all was the quality of partenjost, party consciousness, which Lenin had called for in his article on party organization and literature in 1905. Partenjost was strongly implied in the 1934 Writers' Conference definition quoted earlier, i.e. in the task of educating the workers in the spirit of communism. Once the principle of partenjost was accepted, the other principles followed as night the day, for was not the party the representative of the people's interests, the purveyor of ideology, the leader of the class struggle? Thus, the concepts of narodnost, ideanost, and klassavost were subsumed in the idea of partenjost, and they meant at any particular time only what the party wanted them to mean.
Right.
And this is vital to understand. It's why nothing makes sense. It's not meant to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense.
But it's this kind of wordplay too that I think is applicable in SEL. When I heard you read this to me yesterday, I was like, "Oh my
Good
God,
book. Right.
that's what SEL is doing." So
Right.
here they're talking about the arts, and in Mao's case, the people are only those who agree with the program, with the
Right.
plan to move the people towards this socialist reality. Okay.
Right.
And in SEL, what they talk about, they use things like self-management. I'm going to show the castle wheel in a moment, and I think we can map the oasts so to speak to the wheel.
Well, the reason why I think you can, and I'm pretty certain about one thing that I think a lot of people forget, is that, again, to go back, why did Marxism spread throughout Russia and China and not Germany? Well, it's debatable about the Germany part. Okay. I would argue it did in a way that's actually far more similar to what's going on in China but that's another conversation. But why did it not spread through Britain? Why did it not spread through Western Europe? Why did it spread in this area that was like, for many people, I mean, I've heard people say, well, like, why don't we understand Stalin and Mao? Well, because those Eastern Europeans, who are they? They're other people. They're not as intellectually interesting as we Westerners, right?
Well, the other argument I've heard is there's no tradition of individual freedom.
That's
There's
not
no
true. It's not
Right.
true at all.
I
And so,
understand that, but I'm just giving you other reasons that people
Right.
have given is
Right.
that, even a woman I lived with in Austria, when I asked her, how come Hitler? She said, we're a people who like to be led, is how she put it.
Well, I mean, first I would ask her, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a joke. The greatest joke that the Austrians ever played was to convince the world that Hitler was German and that Beethoven was Austrian.
Exactly.
And then listen, my family's Austro-Hungarian, so I can, Maxine, sorry about the barking, that may happen periodically. She wants to be part of
That's
us.
okay.
But, okay, so back to, one of the things that a lot of people don't know about Russia and about China, and this is because of how effective socialist realism is. They had a profound artist world, both of them. Now let's just talk about Russia. Russia did not have, they had institutions and academies for the arts that were amazing. I mean, this is where you have Pasternak, Dostoevsky, painters. A lot of what we see going on now, and I'm speaking of this purely artistically, going on in Russia right now is trying to return to that pre-revolutionary period. People keep saying he's trying to become the USSR. That's utter... No. I'm not saying this is good or bad, but he's trying to return to the time, much closer to the time of the Tsar, if anything. And I'm not stating whether this is good or bad, but, this is really up to the people. This is not our business. It's really not, right? And so especially concerning the fact that it was not, Lenin had been expunged over to Iceland, and then, not Gorky, I forget his name right now. Radek basically brought him over in a train and like dumped him over there. And then, Stalin's Georgian. Stalin's not Russian, he's Georgian, So this whole thing, if we talk about colonialism, really? Are we really going to talk about that and then not talk about that? I mean, it's kind of remarkable to me. But the fact is also the arts there and religion, those two things are why. The culture in Russia, they were Russian Orthodox. And that Russian Orthodoxy, you have a fear of God, not a love of God, right? So that started this sort of thing, right? But more than that, the Academy of the Arts was amazing. So what did they do first? What did even Mao do first? You go in, what did we see happen here first? Then what do? You apply the same exact formula into academia. Now, in my opinion,
destroy the old is what you're saying, right? We've got to do away with the old.
More than that. So academics is by its very nature, how do I put this? Okay, a satirist from Romania said, I do not trust anyone in the academy and I have nobody to complain to. He said this under the Soviets. The absurdist writer, Ionescu, the playwright that I'm working on now, very similar stuff. Romania is actually a fascinating example of this because they had no communist party. They had a budding, incredible artist world. That's why Pitesti Prison was there. That's why they went in there. They had their own very religious, very devoted community, and they went through like a freaking fire. Burned it all. Almost literally, just spiritual. It's like a soul.
Is this to take away anything else that matters to people that either grounds them in reality?
It's more simple. I think it's more simple than that. Like if my mother would probably say it's more simple than that. I think what it does, you know how much we got all excited about Puss in Boots 2?
Yes, we both love this movie, by the way.
Okay.
It's great. If you haven't seen it, Puss in Boots 2 is fantastic.
It's a simple story, but it's exactly the opposite of everything that we just said. Also, when you take something that is, ephemeral, Mary Oliver, the poet, says we need beauty because it makes us yearn to be worthy of it. You deny people access to the things that they will naturally do. I mean, Václav Havel talks about this specifically. Then you complicate it. It's not, I don't think it's as complicated as people think it is. The complication, like making it seem so complicated that it's, there's no way we can undo this. No, it's actually not. But look at how quickly people have actually even lost sort of I laughed recently, somebody was talking about, well, what are we supposed to do? Pretend that the emperor has clothes? And I'm like, dude, that's not an emperor. First, realize it's not an emperor. Then we can talk about whether it matters whether that person's wearing clothes or not. Because it may not be any of your business. You understand? Like it's not, right. We forget the stories. When you forget the story, so that actual story, many people forget, it's not just one villain. The villain's not the emperor.
He's the guys who sold him the clothes.
Not even sold him, convinced him. And then, who else? The people who he rules, who keeps telling him he has clothes on.
That's right.
The only hero is the child who sees the truth.
And says,
why? So why would they use the same techniques as ESL and CRT to get to kids? They've done this forever. They did this with the young pioneers. They did this with the Red Guard. None of this is new. It's the same formula used over and over again. So as we sit there trying to understand what they're doing, it's almost akin to, here's a story for you. I was living in New York. It was like 2003. I was dating somebody. And, he was an artist, and we decided we were going to go look at the roof, and, it was all romantic, and we decided to, do that. And as we're going up, he opens the door, and I look out, and there's a man in a ski mask going from rooftop to rooftop. He says, "Excuse me, can we help you?" I say, "Go, go, 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 go." So, trying to understand what this guy is doing is kind of irrelevant. There's a man in a ski mask. Continue on, going down the stairs. I'm in front of him. He's behind me. The guy actually, sorry, he's in front of me. I'm behind him. The guy grabs me, throws me to the ground, and puts a gun on my head like that. I'm looking at him. I'm opening my wallet, handy, because there's a gun on my head, right? He says, "Hey, man, you don't want to do this." And I'm like, he already is.
Oh my God.
So my point is, they already are. Understanding it, the why at a certain point doesn't matter. Really
Thank you.
doesn't.
Thank you. Every day I get the same thing. Like, you need to convince me there's a why before I'll see that it is. And I'm like, but why do you need me to convince you they have a reason? Does the murderer need a reason to murder you?
I'll tell you how, listen,
who
as
wants
somebody,
power over you really need a reason for you to say no?
let me tell you a little secret. So my best friend was murdered in 2014. So I'm a part of a very unusual club. Very few people will ever understand. You know, people will ask me, well, why did they do it? I can give them a reason. The answer is 99.9% of the time, you never know why. The why is irrelevant. Americans, I think, have no concept. I mean, I think New Yorkers are starting to get this now. Canadians are. People who have been in, you know, everybody keeps talking about these cities and these people as if they're not Americans. That's frightening to me.
Yeah, right.
You know, all this talk of national divorce. How cute. I mean, man up, people. I'm sorry. Seriously. Like, man up.
Well, first of all, that's an illusion too.
It is. And also, it's a, you know, peaceful divorce. I can't wait to see it on CNN. Mostly peaceful divorce. You know, like, it's like, I mean, it's going to absolutely happen that way. And
exactly.
and one of the reasons why, excuse me for that, I'm just I've got turn off all the way off because I've got one of my crew members is on my override, so that if they gets in touch with me, it's like, you know, stage manager. Oh, okay, you know, it's all
Yeah.
good. Because I'd actually asked him to you know to text me. So if he sees this later, it's like, no, it's not your fault. It's all good. So you know, the thing is that I'm not saying that this stuff isn't serious, but we made a massive mistake. I think after Stalin and stuff, we're now trying to play catch up. We all very rapidly have forgotten who and what happened with Hitler very quickly. But it's odd. But we can kind of refresh that one faster. But
Right.
no one ever really analyzed what happened with Stalin and Mao. The
No.
fact that there never has been this, and now we're trying to do it, guys, we can do that later. Now, let's look at what the dissidents said and how they got out of it, what they warned us about. Use their tactics to do it because they always, and I say this, it always works.
That's
And
right.
I say this too, they know that. They're terrified. The lockdowns, the censorship, the freedom of speech becoming nothing. What we've got on our favor and on our side is, you know, that joke, the left can't meme? I would rephrase it, radical collectivists cannot art. Period. They can't. They're not capable of it because they're creating something that is not artful. It is not true. It is absolutely crap. You can spot it a mile away.
Right.
It's bad art. It's
Right.
awful. And there's the trouble, though. The longer we accept it, human beings, and I don't care who you are, I don't care. You will say, oh, I hate art. Sorry, I can prove it to you. Give me a little bit of time. You will start to drink the sand when you're in an ultra artistic and cultural desert. Literally. You will sooner try to suck dew off leaves or drink, you know, Mountain Dew. It is not an addiction. We need it. It's part of our humanity.
Right.
And the more we deny it, the more disgruntled we become. So then they'll start creating art that's called brutalism, and it gets uglier and it gets worse. Like that
Well,
terrible piece of work about Martin Luther King, which, oh my God, that was horrible.
it's so hideous.
It
I
was
mean,
so hideous, but that's intentional.
I think that's really important. You brought up, you know, that's a lot of people don't know art genre, and so, or not genre. I mean, whatever you would call it, like brutalism, for example, versus
Right.
socialist realism. And one of
They're
the
they're
things,
linked, inherently linked.
right? But the idea, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is with socialist realism, is to the way you deny what's real. Because that, and the point of that is to deny the individual. You have to be part of the collective, right? The hero is toil, and toil outside the collective is unthinkable. So is that you create art that in no way, shape, or form reflects two things. One, the actual pain even of being alive, of human life. So we can't show any kind of real struggle, human struggle, because then you might have to show that the party can't save you, or how the individual overcame. You can't, if there's pain, it
Well,
has to
this
be
is why we
resolved by the
like Puss in
state.
Boots, right? This is why
Right.
we like Puss in Boots.
It has to be
But
resolved
I'll
by the state, or there is no pain because the state makes everything perfect. Or, like you can't have real art, because real art tells a real, true, authentic story, which either isn't a happy ending, or if there's a happy ending, it's because the individual made it so, or chose to see it so, not because the state came along and made it all better.
I
So
think it's a little bit. There's a little nuance there that I think is important to pinpoint. I think perhaps this would be a good time to read the introduction by Seelos,
sure. Okay, sure.
but also the dancing nurses phenomenon.
Okay, so
Because
which one?
and let's
So
start with the
this is
Seelos stuff. Let's start with the Seelos stuff because here's the reason I say this. What you said is that you cannot. Now that's not true, because the artist. This is why artists get quite literally killed for this, over this issue. That's what the purges are about. That's what look, think about how many people who are artful, and I don't even just mean artists, are now dead. Whether through act of the state directly or what we call democide, right? Because an artist,
is that like cancel culture, democide?
well, that's cancel culture light, I guess. Democide
Yeah,
means mass murder by the state.
I see.
Without genocide is a form of democide,
I got you.
right? And there's much more democide in the world than there is genocide. Democide is inherently anti-human, right? Art is inherently human. So I can, for example, if you can pull up, for example, there's this beautiful painting by an artist named, it's called Freedom in the Aquarium. And his last name is spelled Balasa, Balasha, Sabine Balasha. He was a family friend. He actually was Ceausescu's portrait painter.
Okay.
But he was never on board with any of this. But if you put up Freedom in the Aquarium and you look at what that is, it is against, in every way, what socialist realism stands for. He called himself a romantic surrealist. This is to me an incredible piece of work when you realize that he was painting this under this period of time we're talking about. He found a way. Eugene Ionescu, the absurdist, found a way. So it's not that you cannot. It's that they will punish you if they catch you.
So explain to us how this violates the socialist realism rules.
So we can go back and look at this, but let's first read what Seelos says about what it is. And he said this, he wrote this in I think it's 59, and it was published in New York, and it's the introduction to a satirical work by an anonymous Russian writer. There are so many stories out there about the ways that artists work their ways around these systems.
Okay.
Their courage and their successes, their triumphs, their ability to do it. I mean, there are so many of these. But they don't teach them right now.
No.
But it doesn't matter.
I put page 10 first because it was 10, 11, and then 14. Which one did you want to
So
start
this
with?
goes that some Americans may believe that socialist realism, or SocRealism as it is called, is nothing more than a style applied in the literature and art of the Soviet Union and in those areas in which its influence extends. A style which bears witness to the 19th century taste of bureaucrats for wedding cake architecture, for flat colors and paintings, and for plush luxury. That anyone who opposes this system of aesthetics is committing a political offense might appear fantastic. But unfortunately, SocRealism is not merely a question of taste. It is a philosophy too, and the cornerstone of official doctrine worked out in Stalin's days. Socialist or SocRealism is directly responsible for the deaths of millions of men and women, for it is based on the glorification of the state by the writer and artist, whose task it is to portray the power of the state as the greatest good, and to scorn the sufferings of the individual. It is thus an effective anesthetic. The inferiority of poetry, novels, plays, and pictures produced in accordance with this formula cannot be avoided, since reality, which is quite disagreeable, has to be passed over in silence in the name of an ideal, in the name of what ought to be. However, such an inferiority does not prevent, and indeed facilitates, the extension of the influence of this culture. The battle against SocRealism is, therefore, a battle in defense of truth, and consequently, in defense of man himself.
Now, I do want to interrupt you here real quick because a lot of us have been engaged in a fight to get certain kinds of books out of libraries. And what I'm realizing now is we keep calling them, pornographic, and they are technically pornographic, but it's more than that, because there are novels that are pornographic, and one could say they're actually rather beautiful. I mean, or whatever. I mean, other people might not like them for their religious reasons or whatever. But what I'm saying is there's an elegant, artful way to write sex scenes. I still don't think they should be in a K-12 school, but I mean, there is an artful way to do it. But what I notice these books have in common is they depict human suffering with scorn and contempt, and in a way that it's like the solution is this perfect future. The solution is getting rid of, the individual suffering, and that the only way we're going to fix this is to rid society of these individual, of this individual difference or whatever. They don't explicitly say, like Stalin did, the state. They're very careful in American stuff, SEL, literature, all the
They
struggle
never said
literature.
it either.
They never said the state? Okay, see,
The
that's
hero,
fascinating.
remember, the hero is toil.
Right, so
The
struggle
toiler is unthinkable outside the collective.
Well, that is true. In every single one of these books, the solution is in community, or the solution is in the communal, the collective.
Look,
the
people are offending the LGBTQ community.
Correct.
Right? And I grew up in a gay community. And so, but one thing you said about libraries, right? Now, I am adamantly opposed to certain books being on a syllabus for children who are not ready for them. But let's say I'm in school,
right,
and I'm, this is something I think is vitally important, because, at some point I would love to talk to you about how was it that I got through Tish without indoctrination. And here's the key. If I didn't have access in libraries, and I can't criticize something, we don't want to do this thing where if something is in a library, it's very different than it's in a syllabus. Very, very different.
I so agree. That is,
right?
There's actually three components. It's in the library in the stacks. Okay. It's in the library, prominently displayed in your face with a bunch of similar books. Like, read this. This is important.
See, that's curation. See, that's a syllabus. A librarian.
I think so too. And then there's the actual, you are now required to read this assignment.
Look, something being in a library is very different than so my aunt was a librarian, right? Mm-hmm. And the role of the librarian to be able to be this idea that knowledge is available, and then we find a way to reach for it. A librarian is simply somebody who's not supposed to guide you in a direction. That's supposed to help you find the direction yourself so that you can figure out what you want to look at in your research. To put, a book, like, remember that book when we were kids, like, Mommy, where did I come from? Right?
Right.
Now, if you put Mommy, where did I come from? Instead of a book under, say, human sexuality, and you put it in, fables. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't, the fact, so, here I know in Florida, one of the biggest issues was these books were not put in places where, for research, these were put in places where intentionally a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old could reach it, get it.
Exactly.
And and look, there's a reason why pornography, when it was a magazine, like, I mean, I'm old enough to remember that if you wanted to go buy porn, you had to go into the stacks, or you had to go through past the thing, you had to show an ID. I mean, this was stuff that you had to do. And gates are vital. Our gatekeepers right now are imbeciles. So I'm not saying, I think the approach for all the time that we're spending trying to appear like we are censoring, and that's what they're calling it, which isn't, remove the meaning. I mean, censorship is, when I say it is the worst thing, it actually is, because it creates a self-censor loop, right? That said, when your job is to be a librarian, your job is not to promote or remove. Your job is to help facilitate access for something that is relevant. So if you're studying, like if I'm studying my theory that queer theory is socialist realism, I want to be able to get to those books.
Right.
Instantly.
But if
Now,
you're a sixth grader, you're not doing
what
that
business?
research.
Well, because this is why, again,
Yeah.
it's the same reason I keep saying that drag queen story hour is not drag. It's not. There are some gates that automatically exist because there are things that you don't have the intellectual capacity yet as a 6-year-old to capture. That's what makes it adult. Go watch The Muppets or Labyrinth or Dark Crystal as an adult, one who was under Jim Henson. And you tell me that there's not stuff in there that you never would have caught before. That's what makes it great children's stories. Our cartoons, Hanna-Barbera, Thundercats, He-Man, She-Ra, they were phenomenal because you could enjoy them with your child. That's the thing. Parents, it is not the job of the state to make sure your children are not getting things in their hands they shouldn't get. That's your job. Do your job. I'm sorry to put it that way. I'm not a parent. I don't envy the challenge you're under. But this is the thing they need to learn how to do. Because
the problem
they're
is
not.
the school doesn't let us know what's there.
Well, that's where
So we can't, if we have no transparency, we
Well,
can't see, we can't gatekeep.
What I'd love to know is how the heck we got to a point where, government unions have that much power.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other
so,
video.
but it's not really a how. I'm being a little facetious here.
Yeah.
Dismantle the unions, dismantle the gatekeepers, dismantle the parent teacher. Just say no. And if they're not, build something new, different.
You're singing my song, but
Of course.
But this is the problem: is people think they can fix it, and I keep trying
can't.
to say, like, you can't fix this thing.
No.
This thing is now, it's embedded itself, and by thing I
Yes.
mean this socialist realism. Now, somebody
Right.
asked in the comments.
By the way, I can't see them, so isn't socialist realism an oxymoron? Well, let's read what, it's funny you say that. Yes, but there's also social realism, which was a movement of art that came out in America. Now, here's the thing. How do I put this? It doesn't matter. It is funny. So that's why the absurdists came up, and they realized that absurdism is. Whether we go to Václav Havel now or the Dancing Nurses, but I think it's important. Like if I could imbue one thing into people here, if I went to art school at Tish, at NYU, and I managed to absolutely not get not only indoctrinated, but the moment that I was sitting in I had a postmodern art class, which, by the way, postmodern art is not postmodern philosophy. This is a really important point. It's really not. I had an art class that I'm sitting there, and when I realized that it had de-evolved into this Judith Butler gender studies class, I had a choice. I realized that I was like, ooh, challenge. I want to get an A on this class, even though she hates me. I knew I could. That's the thing. I knew how to learn. I knew how to do it. And I had fun. And I suddenly had a bunch of people in that class with me. Now, my mistake was I never believed it would get past 1999. I was such lunacy. I mean, there's a website that rated Judith Butler as the worst writer in the world 5 years running. If you look at it, if you
and our
Google
kids
Judith,
are being taught absolute.
but she is the worst writer. Try
I
reading
know.
Judith Butler out loud. What you have to understand, if you fortify your kids, you don't have to deny them to see things. If you fortify them to be able to see something, call it out, say that's BS, and feel like that they have the power
Right.
to say, like, this is one of the reasons I don't like not paying for your education, because I experienced paying for my education and it was hard. I mean, my parents were not rich. They were not. But they yanked me out of public school in third grade when the teachers asked me to write an essay on how the British celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm not even kidding. My mother said, "You're out of there." Puts me in a private school. It was some of the hardest things I'd ever done. It was really challenging. It was very hard, but I learned how to learn, and I learned how to work, and I learned how to trust my mind and know what I'm good at, know what I'm not good at. I got C's trying my best, and I got A's with no effort at all, and I learned that those C's were more important, much more, right? And the fact is then, when I got to college at NYU and I had a mediocre teacher, multiple times, I walked into the department and I said, "I'm paying for this. This teacher sucks. Get me another one." Do it.
But I want to say something though. I've really got to interrupt you here and say something. Everything you're saying is true and would be great, except we have two problems in America that I see. One, we now have the people who are parents today, by and large, were educated in government schools using the same techniques that their
Right.
kids are now getting, only now the
Yes.
kids have it on steroids. Now, if I bring up, for example, like what we sort of gathered here to discuss in part was I want to grab this here. Okay, so this is the castle wheel that we were talking about. You were talking about the different oaths, okay, in SocRealism.
Oh, I mean, this looks so nice and lovely at first.
Doesn't it
When
look
you
lovely?
It looks like it's like brightly colored eyes, and it's like getting more like iris opening up, and your mind is opening up, and look at how lovely
Right.
and eye opening and
But look at
awakening
the-
this is.
Look at
Of
the
course.
language. Okay, so first,
course.
the middle thing, it says, social and emotional learning is an integral part of education and human development. It's the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, according to whom, manage emotions, according to whom, and achieve personal, and here it goes, collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, and how are we going to measure that? Who are others also, establish and maintain supportive relationships, according to whom, and make responsible and caring decisions, according to whom.
So,
Okay?
by the way, the expression I'm getting on my face right now, the reason I'm actually disgusted by what I'm hearing. This feels like the Pitesti Prison experiment light.
This is what I'm saying. And then when you were reading this to me, I was like, oh my God. Then listen, it goes on. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school, family, community partnerships. Who asked for this? Not us. We parents didn't ask for this. To establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful.
It's not even collaborative. It's cooperative. It's not collaborative.
What's the purpose of this? Okay, to help address various forms of inequity, according to whom, and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools that could contribute to safe, healthy, and just, according to whom, communities.
Well, let me just address this equity thing. This is one thing. Whenever you hear the word equity, just remember something. The only thing we do equitably is die. Period.
Exactly.
And end of story. And that word, because it sounds like equal, and we have, look, James Lindsay says that these people have the exact same vocabulary we have, but they just have different definitions for things.
Absolutely.
This is a great one, though. Equity means equality of outcome.
Exactly.
That is, let me ask you a question. What if you raised your family equitably? What would happen? First of all, you would all be basically mimicking your child's rearing. So by the time when your kids are all sitting there going like, you'll all be doing that too. And you're stuck there, right? And so, this is absolute bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry, excuse my language.
No,
and you should look at this. You should look at this. I'm telling you, this looks like it's a big deal. What you have to do. So, this is Judith Butler. It's bullshit. Bullshit. Don't waste your time on it. Like, just don't even waste your time on it. Just say no.
The problem is, it is.
I know.
Currently a $3 billion.
I know. So
And
here's the thing. So is the entertainment industry, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So what I'm trying to say to empower people here. So Wagner talks about the power of the powerless, right?
Yeah.
We can't all look at this in this academia, like, right?
This, by the way.
But you can see. I mean, this is if we could show that dancing nurses phenomenon
Let's
thing.
do it. Let's do
I
it.
think
Guys.
like just watch it. Like just if you don't mind, just go through it
Okay.
and show them. This
We're gonna
I don't
go
even
through-
call it, but it's a little bit long and it explains the Meyerhold phenomenon too. But realize
It's
the
it's
separation of
important.
arts and sciences, the separation of the two, STEM versus look. It's a way of manipulating people into not even realizing when they're being taught an art form, a bad one at that,
Yeah.
into this thing. So, what, I'm sorry, there's a department, an academia now launching called, and this is why I think this is so important, called the Art of Health. The art of public health. And I'm sorry, public health. Public health is to medicine what the DMV is to engineering. It is not a good idea. And if this recent time has not proven that, no, if any excuses people will say, like, oh, but what do we, you know what? Aim higher. Woke,
For real.
dream bigger.
Let's go through this. So this is a thread. As you can see, this was done in May of 2021. And you said there may have been many people pointing out that the proliferation of dancing nurses and doctor videos since the onset of global COVID-19 policy has been, well, tacky. I agree, but also think there may be more going on. And then you go on to say, several months ago, while still a Twitter newbie, I wrote a thread about an artist named Meyerhold. And this is actually a fascinating subthread that I think you guys should look into.
Well, let me just say one thing. The reason it's an important thing, the only thing that's important, is that if you can feel and you'll start to see that if you could just show the very beginning of who Meyerhold was and how people have seen it, what biomechanics his technique was. And he was the contemporary of Stanislavski, and no one knows his name. The reason no one knows his name is that he had fought back against socialist realism. And in doing that, even though he was a member of the party,
and he was a loyal member of the party.
Yes, but
very
well,
loyal.
Yes, but what did that mean? This is just the beginning of Stalin. They didn't know what they were doing. Now we know. We have no excuse for this now.
Yes.
None.
This would be the equivalent of someone today going, but I did the work and I confessed my bias.
Or the equivalent of, you're a parasite. Why haven't you gotten the vaccine? Now.
Exactly.
It's identical
all
to that.
Those people who are like, I'm one of the good ones. I got the vaccine. Okay, Meyerhold.
Yeah, and good Germans are why a lot of people died, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Meyerhold, and
so if you go down a little bit, and just so people know what happened to him, so we can jump ahead, and I can just show you his art form, the thing you'll recognize. So if you go up to, I think go down a little bit. A little bit more. There's the link. The Joker. Yeah, the Joker one.
This is the one. I pulled this up separately.
So if you watch this, what I'll explain to you is, his technique is there's a precision in his movements, and within those movements, he tells a whole story. What was surreal about this, when I saw this film, I actually asked a friend of mine. I said, "Listen, can you stop it? You watch the rest. I don't want to. I think I know the entire plot line," and I was right. It's just my training. Like, I can't explain it better than that. So there's a precision in the movement. And it's called biomechanics. And in that movement, he starts to tell a story subliminal because the body speaks to us. Remember what I said about body language? It's the oldest form we have.
What's he saying? What's this telling us?
We'll get to that in a moment. Okay. I mean, the fact that I knew what was coming is probably just because I've really delved into this with my own body. Right? But let's move away from that for a second and then look at, for example, a similar form you can see in Charlie Chaplin, which is right there. And he's a clown also. He's clowning. So it's a utilization of symbolism and method he called biomechanics. Movement with precision depicting a dichotomy of comedy and tragedy. And now if you jump to Hamilton, more recently, you'll see it again. Now watch the dancers behind Jefferson.
Francis following us to revolution. There is no more status quo. But the sun comes up and the world still spins. I helped Lafayette draft a declaration. Then I said I gotta go. Gotta be in my
Okay, that's good. So you see, there's this weird precision. It's almost like they turn into the weather. Is kind of the way it felt when you were at the play. So what happened to Meyerhold? So he basically anything that was not called socialist realism at the time they called formalism. Replace that with colonialism, racism, anything you want. Same crap. Classism, whiteness. Whiteness is essentially, in my opinion, you may as well be hearing white army. It's not about race. It's about ideology. So if you keep looking and you see that what they did to him is he stood in front of the last thing that they believe he ever said is he stood in front of the fellow artist guilds and artist and writers clubs. And he said that by hunting formalism, you are destroying art. So what did they do? They put him in a camp, in prison, tortured him. And he wrote voraciously. And I have, samples for those writings that were all released by the KGB after the fall of the Soviet Union. He wrote to Molotov, pleading. Didn't matter. They stabbed his wife 11 times, gouged out her eyes. Then, once he confessed, because he was in so much pain, and he talks about the pain, they execute him anyway.
Yeah.
Art is that dangerous to these people. That dangerous. So if you go back to the original thread now.
That's
right?
this from the nurses.
Yes. And just go through it. And so earlier on, what do I say here? As I said, performance. So you can just, please go ahead and read and I'll just listen.
Okay, so performance is at its most simplified a form of storytelling, even when the performance may appear to simply be something else. So this is Hitler Youth, right? I believe. So they're doing this performance.
Well, they're showing athleticism here.
It's an
issue of health.
Yes, health. And this is, also I'm always struck when there's a lot of synchronization of movements. So yes, we're seeing health, and we're also seeing collaboration between
collective. It's not collaborative; it's cooperative.
What I mean is they're doing something all together at the same time. They're doing the same thing.
The only reason I'm making a distinction is collaboration. Every single person brings out their individual merits, their individual talents, and you come together and you create something new. Cooperation is not collaboration. Collaborative creates, you like that guy. I don't know, for anyone who's seen it, it's a fascinating thing to watch that guy dancing on the hill, who then suddenly everybody joins him. Everyone thinks that's collaboration. It's not the second or third person joins. No, it's because at one point, he and the other guy start doing their own thing with full commitment and just having a great time. That's what draws everybody in. Collaboration is contagious.
Watches a performance of the Red Detachment
This blew me away. This is
that's, by the way, Mao's wife dancing.
Yeah, so she was a very famous dancer. And this is so unbelievably creepy.
Now remember, the hero is toil, and the toiler is unthinkable outside the collective. Keep that in your mind as you watch.
Chinese have developed a new form of dance drama.
It's a new form of dance drama. Oops, I skipped it. Sorry. Why is this not? This happens.
I don't know. It happens sometimes.
Yeah. So she's
all
a
over
slave
China.
Girl or something.
The Chinese have developed a new form of dance drama based on their own revolutionary experiences.
Their own revolutionary
This scene represents the moment when a runaway slave girl, cruelly beaten by her owner, meets a contingent of the Red Detachment who welcome her into their guerrilla ranks.
Watch the movements, but watch the movements, and then watch the people who move around her.
It's very like
the hero is toil, and the toiler is unthinkable outside the collective.
their pronouns are definitely they, them. I mean, no, but what I'm saying is
100%. No, 100%. No, and so if you notice here, she doesn't exist. She has there's nothing there. She's not there. Unlike in the Joker, or unlike in other things, the body. So just keep going, and you'll see what I'm saying a little bit more. Just watch. I created this a similar way I would have done it in school. So just if I give you a feeling first.
Oh wait, this is the same problem we had last time. So come on, play. Ugh, why does this do this?
It happens to me too sometimes. Securitate, stop being such a chefach. Tish.
Come on.
I actually replay that again, but it's really what it is it's you'll hear these are children. Okay.
Yeah, there's
Education in China extends.
It cut it short. That's really weird. I go back. I return to it. So basically, it says education in China extends way past, and that so this is more recent. Now this is in China.
This is more recent. I taught ESL to Chinese students for 3 years with VIP Kid, and I had students who would share their videos with me of doing this at their schools, and they were so proud of it. They were so incredibly proud of it, and their teachers. This was done all over China.
Now, this is just before COVID. This is actually done mostly in a linear timeline. This came out just before COVID. The next one came out at the beginning of COVID.
I remember this so well. For this village couple, their stage could be anywhere. And yet, when they put these up, I think the point people put them up as if to say, isn't this joyful and great? Aren't they having so much fun? See how they can just be happy wherever they are. It doesn't matter.
Even more than that, yep. Now keep going. To help the coven recover from depression. Now, let's talk about why people could have been depressed at the beginning of COVID, shall we?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Exactly.
So keep going.
This is so creepy. This is so unbelievably creepy. Do you guys see this? Okay, so
this is actually just before COVID when they had their military thing in 2019.
Oh wait, so we're gonna watch this. So creepy. Look at their heads. Watch their heads.
Be the guy in the third row, the second row center. Be him. He doesn't do
Cut it
it.
off.
I know. I know. It happens. It sometimes.
No, look at their heads. Look at his face. Oh, such bliss. Look at their heads. Look at their heads. Look at their eyes. Now, what's the story being told here?
The hero is toil. The toiler is unthinkable outside the collective. Keep going.
Oh, he was outside the collective. He is unthinkable. He must go. I'm not trying to make light of it, but they're all the same, and he must go. And then we have back to the kids. This was those same kids that you had
It's
before.
muted now. If you just click on you probably get to the end of it. It's less than 35 seconds.
But education in China extends far beyond the formal lessons in the classroom. Children.
Something.
Yeah, there's something, but it's all right. You can find that online. Keep going.
So
and then here, this
lady.
is, yes.
1、2、3、4，2、2、3、
She's
4，
counting.
3、2、3、4，4、2、3、4。第二式，老牛耕地。1、2、3、4。
Watch the movements.
3、2、3、4，4、2、3、4。第三式，小猫伸懒腰。1、2、3、4，2、
Now, keep going from there. I want people to remember those two. Now, this is the beginning of the dancing nurses phenomenon.
Over in China. These people are quarantined.
They're very, very, very sick.
Don't they look so sick?
Very
Definitely
sick.
they should be locked away from all society because they look so healthy.
They couldn't do this at home, clearly.
No.
So contagious.
Happy now because they're dancing.
So contagious, too. Keep going.
Lifting spirits. The nurses are dancing with the patients. I see a difference.
Now keep going. I take you back to 2012 for a moment.
National Health Service.
The National
And our
Health
very
Service.
special guest this evening, patients and staff of
So this
Great
free.
Patients and staff.
National
But this is before COVID, right?
2012. Patients and staff.
Patients and staff of Great Ormond Street Hospital of the
Okay,
United Kingdom.
go back. Keep going.
Unidentified makeshift hospital in Wuhan, China.
They let them square dance on Monday.
Yeah.
You noticing some of the movements?
Yes.
Okay, keep going. Again, back to 2012, just to show. If you look at what these are doing, look at them, the dancing nurses there.
Yep.
Now, the next thing we come to is now the beginning of it leaving China. This was Iran.
Wow.
Now keep going. Again, I show you back 2012.
England, 2012, with dancing medical professionals. So creepy. What the heck is this creature with that?
That's Voldemort.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Now keep going. Now this one, notice what it says.
Man, I'm gonna go for a run. He just ended his 14-day self-quarantine.
Now notice there are people standing there in these suits. Clearly it was a self-quarantine.
Self-quarantine.
Now keep going.
Farting.
Now remember the yawning kitty?
Yes. This is yawning kitty.
Now it comes to America. Now it comes to America.
Front lines, of course, fighting the novel coronavirus. Some healthcare workers at Jefferson Hospital took to social media to send this message.
Yawning kitty.
Love it. The video, the staff seen dancing. And
Stay home.
At the end, one person holds up that message saying, "Stay home." The message was filmed at Jefferson's Neuro Intensive Care Unit. The staff says they were just having some fun during what have been stressful times, certainly for
Just
them.
having fun.
Yeah,
That's
even though they're all doing
That's
yawning
why they
kitty.
filmed it.
And they're doing
That's
yawning
why they filmed
kitty.
it. That's
And
why
they're doing
they
yawning.
filmed
Yeah, and they're doing yawning kitty. Keep going. And so here you say, no, I start to talk and comment on this. Yawning kitty. No, scroll down. And I meant this for a little comedic relief, but if you put the volume up, it's, they're doing it to,
Oh, here.
yeah.
Why is it not playing?
I don't know, but it's actually saying, "You're here, there's nothing to fear, and I know that my heart will go on." And so while patients are seen in the videos out of Wuhan, note they're absent in the video streaming into our homes in the West. Okay?
Right, because we can't possibly see that they're actually well.
No, there's more to that. It's another reason.
Oh, okay.
There is a disconnection. There's a disconnection between the essential workers and everyone else. Only a select few are encouraged and able to join each other through music, movement, and even humor to find comfort in a sense of unity. The unity could only be amongst who are the people, the nurses, the unionized nurses. So no, you don't get to find that. So keep going, and I'll let you move on.
Okay. And we got more. Come on, people.
Give me a hole if you got your funky bus fare.
Only a select few are encouraged and able to join each other.
Yeah,
Now keep going.
I remember when I saw these, that was my sensation. Is like, we can do this, you can't.
That's
We
what you're
are
supposed to
nothing,
feel.
we're not.
Now, that's what you're supposed to feel, because what happens later? Only a select few may joyfully gather.
Or mostly peacefully gather.
Remember that one? You want to go out? You have to get in with partnerst.
That's right. You have to be in the right party.
You have to get, no, but also ideanos, partnerst. You have to be in the whatever the party wants it to mean. This is socialist realism. That's what this is. I don't say it in the thread, but that's what this is.
But people look at it and they don't think that up to them. They think
Now,
like, oh, isn't it great? They're having fun.
listen, that's what they're supposed to think. Isn't it great? They are having fun. What were you doing?
Not having
I couldn't go to the theater unless I got vaccinated. I couldn't go to a dance class unless I got vaccinated.
Right.
You have to comply so you can be a human being. You are unthinkable outside the collective.
Wow.
It is difficult for those deemed inessential to understand how a crisis allows for time for large choreographed and filmed dance routines, or why only some people are allowed to create for themselves and each other a ritualized time, space, and action. And that's because, as Václav Havel explains, the ritual is imbued in the ideology. The only of those, every moment becomes ritualized, whether it's, putting on a mask. I make a joke and say it's, Biden, Fauci, Build Back Better,
Oh my God.
Right.
True.
I mean, but you're donning something.
Do you remember the Obama years with the little kids singing about Obama?
No, because I was very lucky that I was unshackled from politics completely. Then I didn't see it until he bastardized the George Washington's farewell address. But keep going and watch what happens here. And there's so many of them. See, these are angels. What story are they telling? I can't hear you, unfortunately.
I'm shocked they let them wear different colored scrubs.
I'm not, because they still have to find unity with their diversity.
Oh, that's right.
Keep going and notice. Keeps happening. Now keep going. And I'll tell you, anybody who's I was so desperate to move. Why only some are celebrated for celebrating? You couldn't dance at a wedding. They took all of this away from all of us. It's intentional. Because the body remembers these things. You move, you do these things, you dance together. It breaks mass formation. It can also create mass formation. If you keep going, and then here he's getting to celebrate because he got his vaccine.
Wow. He gets to celebrate because he's compliant.
Bingo. The hero is toil.
Out there,
because the hero is toil, and the toiler is unthinkable outside the collective.
Oh my God. There they are, all dancing.
And remember, they are not well enough to care for themselves. They are not responsible enough to care for each other without strict rules of confinement.
And now that you've seen, I want to go back to it when we're done with this, but I want to go through some more of that SEL, because I really want people to see the connection that what we're taking is we're taking small children. We're not waiting for them to grow up and be exposed. This had an impact on adults, okay? There were adults who were like, yes, of course I shouldn't dance because I'm not one of the essential workers. Yes, of course I should have other people who confine me to my house or my nursing home. Yes, of course I should stay home. Yes, of course I should get my vaccine.
And yes, of course, the nurses who are compliant are to be celebrated as heroes. There is now statues of doctors and nurses looking up like this with a mask on, because, woo! That's all right. So, looking like this, because there's a mask on, gazing up above, because they are somehow the imbuement of knowledge and goodness. It's everywhere.
So
everywhere.
We who didn't have formal social emotional learning instruction and all of the little wheel topics,
right.
We still, not all of us, but probably about half of us, easily succumbed to the social emotional pressure, the relational bullying, the artistry.
Could you go back to the castle wheel again? for a second?
Yeah, I want to go back to that. This is the wheel.
Can you read
And if
that
you-
out loud again?
What?
Could you read that out loud again with that in mind, what we just saw?
What we just saw. Okay. So it's the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. Feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school, family, community partnerships to establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum, and instruction and ongoing evaluation. SEL can help address various forms of inequity and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe, healthy, and just communities.
Just for a little comedic relief, because right now I just feel like I need a drink. Can you end that thread, because I want to show people something? It should be, you have to laugh at this stuff. You have
Okay,
to.
so and what thread? So
The same one. The same
oh,
one. Go
the
back
same
to
one. Okay, so back to this.
Yeah, go down and just skip over that and go to that. Click that.
This
right,
one?
the one above it. That one.
I mean, should.
No, go to
Hit
the
the
beginning.
music,
Go to the
Ken.
beginning. Go to the beginning of it.
Oh, sorry.
Everyone must do it. I mean, should. Hit the music, Ken.
Put your hand on your head, just like that. Then lean to the side and lean to the back. Get your face in tight on your camera and give us a close-up of each retina. Hit the floor with your pangolin, then type in all your bank card pins. The Xing Ping Shuffle is all the rage. Shout out your name, address, and age.
Xi Jinping, the People's Republic of China, 67 and hot.
The pangolin is so cute.
The Xing Ping Shuffle should not be missed, so we'll send this link out to your contact list.
And that's the Xing Ping Shuffle. Make sure to like and follow. And don't worry, I already follow you. Everyone must do it.
So one of the things is, I would tell you to play it, but I think I worry about you losing any potential monetization if you do. One of the things that I started to do is I started to parody songs like Safety Dance and, I Will Survive, or excuse me, Staying Alive.
Yeah.
Because, the only way, it's so nuts, but here I say, like, let people look at it again. I don't want to get you, this one might get you in trouble. This one right here. But
a couple seconds of sound, or if I leave it muted, I won't. But
it basically what it says is down with the CCP.
Oh, okay.
Take down the, yeah. And then it shows again, Xi there. Now, I'm not just targeting the CCP here. The CCP here, I think, is an example of, they're the ones that are really doing it. But may I share something with you that we didn't get a chance to talk about real quick? And before we go to the,
Oh, yeah.
the stuff by, I think it's important to, we already looked at the Vaclav Havel. Look, the reason this stuff matters is there's a way out. There is a way out. And it doesn't require, in fact, it won't work if you try to dismantle all of this and build something anew. That's what they want you to do, because they want you to be, here's the thing. He says,
struggling.
not just that, more than that. He says, let me see something here a second, if you don't mind. A mixture of gullibility and cynicism had been an outstanding characteristic of mob mentality before it became an everyday phenomenon of masses. In an ever-changing, incomprehensible world, the masses had reached the point where they would, at the same time, believe anything and nothing. Think that everything is possible and that nothing was true. The mixture in itself was remarkable enough because it spelled the end of the illusion that gullibility was a weakness of unsuspecting primitive souls, and cynicism the vice of superior and refined minds. Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism, Part 3, Chapter 11, 1951.
Well, I also put together in my little, presentation thing that I made here with your text, I did put together something else where I went and got some information about cults. Because
Right. Yeah, this is a great transition. But before you jump into that, can I share one thing?
Yeah, sure.
The reason that I'm jumping into this is so one of the things. So this is from a book. My thing is mirrored right now, so you're not going to see it because it just weirds me out not to be mirrored. But it says
It says readings
and ritual studies. It's by Ronald J. Grimes. It was one of my texts in college, and it's a text that I keep going back to over and over and over and over again. And this was published in the 90s. And understand that this is not talking about these things from this is way before the woke stuff imbued. In fact, I never thought it would. Now, ritual, by this definition, is simply requires three things: ritual, time, space, and action. That's it. It's all you need. So the Super Bowl is a ritual. The Grammys, they're dismantling all of them. To sit there and be upset about the fact that, a performance at the Grammys was so mediocre. Because I'm not even going to call it satanic, because it's mediocre. It's lousy. It's bad. He's running around wearing a little hat going. Freedom Tunes does a great job parodying him. He's like, pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. I mean, that's all it is. But the thing is, you remove rituals. Rituals, like art, people will start to ritualize things automatically. The danger here, though, is when you start to do what's called the political witch hunt ritual. I don't mean this in a Trumpian sense, or in a Donald Trump sense, or in a political sense, as they are, but it's related. The reason I say it's not the same thing is because the thing that they're leaving out, and where I knew that this was a major problem, was the way we were separated from, TDS was a political witch ritual, the COVIDian phenomenon, the attack on the vaccinated, all of that stuff. But here he explains something really profound, is he says that there is a formula to what creates this political witch hunt ritual. And this is imperative for what you're talking about, I think, with a cult, right? He shows this basic y-axis, okay? Can you see that? Very basic.
Yeah.
It's a y-axis. So on the X1 here, right, is corporate organization. Leads to the degree of imminence. Imminence meaning how much the political witch hunt spreads, the act of witch hunting. Then the y-axis is the overall rate of witch hunting and the dispersion of it across institutional areas.
Right.
So what he says is, in this conclusion, and it's an amazing essay. The essay is by Albert Bergeson, okay? And it's peer-reviewed for all those who want to know. And it says, and he, there's talks to Turner, which is about criminality. He talks about here that what will happen, the state and a society, this is neither said in a good or a bad way, because there is a goodness to this as well as a bad. It's just an observation. It will create deviance in order to maintain power. I see us making this very, very critical mistake because of beautiful trouble. As James Lindsay nails it, the action is the reaction. You create more political witch hunting. You strengthen the power of the totalitarian system, which is what Vaclav talks about, which we'll have to get to that at some point. But here's what the conclusion is, and it's quite remarkable. He says, this formulation of political deviance suggests that the origins of deviance need not be considered solely as a response to some kind of crisis. Political deviance has its origins in the very organization of collectivities as corporate actors. Similarly, deviance need no longer be viewed as functioning solely to repair problematic social boundaries. Deviance also serves to reaffirm that which is stable and enduring in social life, the corporate nature of all natural societies. Finally, this theory allows for the comparative analysis of political witch hunts, and as such provides an advancement over the previous piecemeal treatment that they had been given. I provided a general formulation that is not limited to the specific institutional properties of selective nations, but can be applied cross-nationally to a large sample of societies. This formulation also expands the understanding of witch hunts from being previously considered an institutional feature solely of totalitarian states to being a generalized social ritual employed by all societies to periodically reaffirm their corporate existence. But in a totalitarian one, and we keep doing it over and over and over and over again, that's how socialist realism, no joke, leads to the death of hundreds of millions of people every single time.
Right.
And I would dare say, We just added a body count of, it hasn't been fully numbered. I know 36,000 New Yorkers were killed in old age homes. So we can add that number. How many people died of suicide? How many people died of lack of medical treatment?
Right.
And then, of course, that shall not be mentioned. How the Fauci ouchie.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? And also despair. Just despair. Or how much soul death are we talking here? So then what do you do about it? Right? I think one of the key things is that you cannot, A, blame the metal for the rust, which means don't blame the arts for the people who are doing bad art. Secondly, don't blame liberalism for the illiberal, right? And then, because then you're just helping Mao. He wrote Combating Liberalism. Why help Mao? I don't think we should. Don't blame your child and their capacity to not buy into this stuff for what they're trying to sell them. They're your children. I mean, this is something that my mother and I think a lot of Europeans and survivors of communism, Cuban, all of us, we're kind of befuddled. Like, what are you doing? No one's going to save your kid. You push back and you keep going. You don't keep saying, why are you doing this to me? You don't want to do this, man. Hey, the gun's already here, buddy. Just teach your child how that no matter what they're sold, it doesn't matter. They'll know and look at it like, Dad, guess what they just told me in school today? They're like, isn't that hilarious? Yes,
the parents first have to understand.
Yes,
that this doesn't mean what they say it means.
Right.
And I mean, I want to show you a couple of other things because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Well, let's go to what they
well,
call
look,
social.
this is this other thing. We have to stop believing that just because somebody has credentials, if this hasn't taught us this is why story, I think this is why story is so vital.
I say that all the time, but when you get to just the self-awareness part, where they talk about the abilities to understand one's own emotion, people go, that sounds good. Thoughts and values and how they influence behaviors across contexts. And
hold on a second. Hold on a minute. Wait a second. A child, an adult, who hasn't been put into a position where they have been tortured by others, like the state or whatever, we understand our own emotions. That does not sound good to me. The implication that I don't sounds really bad to me. What I should be able to do is be responsible for my actions without whatever emotion I'm experiencing. That's different. I don't need to be sitting there with, I'm punching because I'm angry. No, stop punching. I don't care if you're angry.
This is what I could say. Okay. Well, once upon a time, for those new to the channel, this will be new for you. For those who are not, this is probably new for Ooana, but okay. So it originally, when they made an SEL curriculum, it was designed for those few kids who don't have a stable home life and they probably need.
This I knew from listening to James talk about it, and then they put it into everybody.
It used to be on an individual, personal basis. Okay. This has evolved, and we're now fully in this.
Wait, is this close to what's it called? Dialectic. There's a kind of behavioral therapy.
Dialectic?
No, there's a kind of behavioral therapy. Maybe somebody in the chat has it. I can't see the chat. But
yeah, there's dialectical behavioral therapy.
Yeah, which can be very effective if you're cluster B. But this is turning everybody into cluster B in order to treat cluster B.
This is actually treating everyone as
if that's gonna make you cluster B.
Thank you. So what they've done is, notice this: they have personally responsible, participatory. You notice they do that, and now we're fully to transformative. Now we know from Mao that transformation doesn't mean anything good. It's that idealized future.
No, it's not just from Mao. I mean, listen, I'll tell you something right
Stalin,
here.
It's Mao.
No, but like one of the keys, listen, I've known people who were communists who were not bad people at all. They were just ideologically, they had this belief in system, and I call them true believers in a gentle way, right? Because I grew up going back and forth to Romania. I'm not saying we shared an ideology, but I've known them. But I also knew someone who once taught me something really profound, and he said, the way I do a test between somebody who's just has an ideology that differs from me, has a belief system that truly wants something that, I wouldn't necessarily argue with. I just think that their tactics to get there are wrong and flawed, but not I don't react run like hell. There's one question I ask. And the question I ask is, what is your opinion of the new man paradox? And if they're a communist and they know what I'm talking about, if they say anything other then it is the greatest flaw in it. I run like hell. Because the new man paradox means that you are transforming the man into the Soviet man, or into the, you could call it a bastardization of the Übermenschen, whatever it is, that's your goal. Now, here's the thing. In order to get there, everyone else has to be liberated, which means death. You too. That transformation is death. That's why I'm looking at this going, holy crap. And my eyes are bulging out. Listen, I am not a parent, but I was raised by a Hungarian mother, and Hungarian women are tough, so tough that when, things were rolling over their kids, they picked up arms and they pushed back. This is not even mama bear stuff. This is Magyar stuff right here. Like, that's what I'm talking about. There's a temperament here. They want you dead. That's how you have to treat this.
And
no other way.
They don't even necessarily mean like not breathing. They mean soul dead.
I would argue that, listen, they could be both.
Some of them probably do want you dead. But
I'm saying if you die, it's a pain in the neck, because then they don't really get to finish figuring you out. But, if you do, so what? There's another one of you right behind them, because there is nothing to you. You are unthinkable outside the collective. They are looking at your child to transform them into something that understands centrality.
Yeah, identity is centrality of your identity. That you
cultural humility. What the hell is cultural humility?
Thank you.
How about humility in general? Sam Harris could use some humility.
How about collective efficacy? What the hell is that?
What does that even mean? Wait, efficacy, collective efficacy. Efficacy means effectiveness, that it's over, so that you can work well as a collective. There it is. You are unthinkable.
Distributive justice. Can you now imagine you're a child? Now, they're not going to use these terms. Let's be clear.
No, but for a child's world, it sounds great because it's a childish thought process. It's juvenile. But these are children teaching this to children.
They're not going to use these terms with their children. But what they do is they organize all the courses, all the classwork. Everything is around having the primary value be in you just absolutely transforming yourself into non-existence.
What happened to everything I learned? I needed to learn. I learned in kindergarten. What happened to that?
No.
They're basically taking the basic goodness of children and their malleability, and they're wanting to please
collective well-being. Now, imagine being a child. Now, understand something. The morality of a child.
Holy peer pressure, Batman.
Okay. But if you believe in, Kohlberg or Piaget or whatever, you understand that prior to about 5th grade, before 10 years of age, roughly, okay, most kids, especially today's fairly immature kids, have a consequence determined sense of morality and ethics. So in other words, something bad happens to me, something uncomfortable is happening. I did something wrong.
It's always their fault.
It's their fault, or they did something, so they need to do something different to make the not so good thing. So in other words, you teach them that they're responsible, not just for their emotions, but the collective well-being, the collective emotions. You weaponize empathy so they feel like everyone's entitled to empathy. So if you're not getting it, either from the teacher or the other people, you must not exist. You must not be worthy of it because everyone's entitled to it. So when you don't get it, when no one seems to understand you, no one cares about you, no one wants to listen to what you have to say, you cease to exist.
You cannot exist outside the collective. Exactly.
Thank you. Suicide much?
How about the hero is toiler? The toiler is unthinkable outside the collective.
Right.
And even once you get into that I'm sorry, I'm really shaken by this actually, because
this is what it is in the classroom. In the classroom, it translates to culturally relevant education. Who's deciding? We don't know. Project-based learning. You can't do something individually. You got to do a project with other people. And youth participatory action research.
Wait, let me ask you a question. Project-based learning, is it an individual project they can do themselves, or is it a project that must be collaborative? Because it doesn't say, or cooperative, it doesn't say that there.
It's one of two things. If they do an individual project, it tends to be assigned and it's geared towards a social justice topic. So they have to.
So they can't even choose their own.
No. I just found out from a mom. She showed me the list of projects they had to choose from. And not only was there no choice, but the choices were all political. And then as far as this youth participatory action research, this is just a very big fancy way of saying activism. Learn how to be a youth activist. Today, I got news from Mom that students have an organization called a WTF Iowa, and they're staging a walkout of their school. The students are staging a walkout.
So they should be put in, if they do that, they should be given, disciplinary, like that should be like, okay, so here's the thing. Only thing I can come to at this point is, first of all, if we know that this is all a theology, first of all, this means that there's religions in schools, which I thought we didn't like. Second of all, what it sounds to me like, this is very simple. The unions have to go, period. All the efforts, in my opinion, every single effort, every single piece of energy, every single parent, listen, parents out there, you have the capacity to shake the world. Your energy should be going into dismantling the unions. Dismantle them from the ground all the way. They have to go. You should be demanding that no school, forget school choice for a while here. The movement, which is being put into school choice, I just pivoted, should be entirely put into no union may touch your child. And I mean that even freaking nurses unions at this point, potentially. But let's move that aside. When it comes to education, what is that? Like, listen, if they think that they have to collectively, look, I came from New York City, rubber rooms, all that stuff. There's lousy private school teachers out there too.
Oh,
but
they're
the
worse.
beginning,
Well,
listen, some of them, but I went to an extraordinary private school. And I think that one of the reasons I didn't become a teacher because I didn't want to deal with the BS. And there's some great ones out there and there's great teachers out there. Finding ways, like Václav Havel talks about, you have to build a parallel pulley. But if you try to fix this from within, once you have a totalitarian, post-totalitarian system here, you can't. The ideology subsumes you. What you have to do is and listen, I'm putting my money where my mouth is here. I'm producing something with a non-union production, period. None involved. I don't want them involved. And the reason is I don't trust them, and neither should you. And I don't care if somebody is there as a teacher out here and is part of a union. I know the unions in the arts. Are you going to honestly tell me that your union has done anything for you? How about in the last 3 years? How many teachers lost their jobs?
Right.
Nothing. If there's not a moment now, you have to stand up and say, wait a second. What have I been doing? Why did I go into teaching? Teachers, parents, dismantle the unions. Destroy them.
100%.
And I think our government, all of it, if we have to do that through adjudication, adjudicate that. Adjudicating CRT, adjudicating, Drag Queen Story Hour isn't going to do anything. It's what they want. Adjudicate that you can no longer have public sector unions.
I agree.
Done.
And this is just people talk about evidence-based. This is measuring using data to inspire practice. When they talk about data, this is what they're saying. Equity and social emotional learning, a cultural analysis. Social emotional learning, SEL, has the potential to help mitigate the interrelated legacies of racial and class oppression in the U.S. and globally. Currently, that potential is underrealized. In this brief, we outline how CASEL's core SEL competencies reflect issues of equity.
Who released this? Who released this?
This is CASEL. CASEL.
But who paid for this?
CASEL. Oh, you mean who are the people behind CASEL? Who's the money?
Scroll all the way down. Let me see that question.
Here,
Let me see
this is where
board of directors.
But this is it does show, wait a minute, hang on. Board of directors. I was going to look at supporters because supporters tells you.
Has anybody ever done CASEL World Economic?
Look. Oh yeah, it's connected. Look. Fetzer Institute.
There it is.
Fetzer Institute, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Okay.
Kellogg Foundation.
Yep. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These are all connected. And
what is the Oak Foundation? What is that?
Oh my God, it's so creepy. The Oak Foundation is this group. Okay. Values, mission. I looked at this one day and I was like, ugh, I got chills at how it
Can we open that up, please?
Yeah. Is family-led and reflects the vision and values of its founders. In all its work, Oak pursues rights-based approaches, gender equality, and partnership with the organizations we fund. We support civil society as a pillar of democracy and justice and nurture innovation and visionary leadership within it. We value diversity both within Oak and blah, 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 blah. Promote social justice. We are passionate in our pursuit of social justice and the protection of wildlife and the environment. We seek partners who show this passion. We aim to lift up the voices of the most vulnerable and support them to understand and pursue their rights. But when you look at some of their stories and their publications, it is so, this sounds all fine and everything, but when you dig into it, things like be authentic, the language that these people use is just so, everything is so
It reminds me
collective.
of something. I'm looking up something. You have to bear with me a second. I'm so sorry, but and I'm
that's
sorry to
great.
do this right now, but I'm convinced just by the language that it reminds me of something. I would bet dollars to donuts, and I'd have to do a little bit of research on this. I would bet good money that the Oak Foundation and Thousand Currents are connected.
Thousand Currents?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we go. It's part of Tides. Okay. Yep. I'm almost 90% sure there's a very direct condition. So, Thousand Currents is a nonprofit that has a fiscal sponsorship program side of it. And what they do is they often, of course, they're the top climate change funders also. All right. And they're part of Tides, Influence Watch. Okay, hold on a minute. Tide Center. Hold on a second. Tides. The Tide Center is a left-of-center nonprofit created to manage the fiscal sponsorship services of its sister organizations. The Tides Foundation, both groups are part of the Tides Nexus. The Tides Nexus, a blanket term. Hold on a moment. There's the Tides Foundation, pioneered fiscal sponsorship or incubation, a process in which a sponsor organization is paid to act as an umbrella under which the new center-left political groups may fundraise and operate prior to achieving recognition as tax-exempt status from the Internal Revenue Service, at which point they're often spun off into standalone nonprofits. In 1996, Tides passed its fiscal sponsorship services to a separate nonprofit called the Tides Center. I'm looking for a very specific name here, and I bet I'm going to find it. Okay. Here we go. The Tide Center projects. I was right. So Tide Center has spun off this foundation. Okay? Got it?
Yep.
The Tide Center has incubated numerous left-wing organizations since its inception. Some remain fiscal projects of the Tide Center, unincorporated organizations maintained by Tides. Others have since become independent nonprofits, according to the Right of Center website Discover the Networks. Between 1996 and 2010, the Tide Center served as fiscal sponsors to some 667 separate projects with combined revenue of $522.4 million. In 2010 alone, the center was actively managing nearly 200 projects. The Alliance for Safety and Justice, the Californians for Safety and Justice, and here, the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, one of the lead organizations in the left-of-center Black Lives Matter and led by self-described trained Marxists, is one of the better-known groups that operates under the Tide Center umbrella. The Global Network Foundation began in 2016 as a project for the center-left fiscal sponsor Thousand Currents. What is Thousand Currents? Thousand Currents board included Sue Rosenberg, a convicted member of the May 19th communist organization responsible for multiple bombings in the 1980s. So what I'm saying here, you want to end this? The way you end this, and I mean that. So for one thing, you teach your kids to say no. Second thing, you go after okay. A fiscal sponsor is required to maintain its 501c3 status. They are required to maintain the rules of a 501c3 with the IRS. You notice how quickly BLM went the moment it was discovered that they were actually buying up properties. But notice nobody mentioned Thousand Currents. The reason is that when people say the left eats their own, they don't understand really what the phenomenon is. What they will do is they will take a bunch of people that they will use as basically pawns in their war, put them out there, and then let them believe that they will be protected and bring in a bunch of people who are pretty scary. Then take away their protection if they have to in order to hide themselves. It's basically your basic drug deal in an urban environment where the guy who's holding the quantity isn't the bad guy. It's no different. It's a basic thing where, and then you're essentially using agency defense where you keep claiming, oh, I'm not the agent of the buyer, I'm the agent of the seller. I'm not the agent of the buyer, I'm the agent of the seller. But the IRS law exists and says you cannot, by any means, be a 501c3 and be a fiscal sponsor of something that's not a 501c3 yet, but can function as one. If you do certain things, you cannot breach the Johnson Act. You cannot sit there and promote violence against the country. You cannot basically use your taxpayers as your money to fund your revolution. It's all
You mean
available.
like SEL?
Well,
you mean
this
like
is
our ESSER funds are
so
funding
what
this?
you do is you go in there, you find some really good CPAs and tax attorneys out there. Those of you who might be CPAs or tax attorneys and you want to be heroes right now, here's what you do. Go in pro bono, get in there and get out. Because it will shut down faster than you can blink your eye, because no one else is going to want to do this, because everyone knows that the nonprofit world, even the good guys, have to be under the watch. I mean, I was formulating a nonprofit and I said, forget this shit, because it's too much. Look at what just happened to James O'Keefe. People who don't understand the nonprofit world don't understand what happened to him. So no one is going to want to go in there. And now it's going to get even scarier for people. But you know, and I know, anyone who knows the nonprofit world, you go in there and you demand to look at their books and you see where that money is going, they will have no choice but to shut it down faster than you could say. So the money is going to stop. It's like, this is the akin and the equivalent of blowing up the railroad tracks.
Right. But this is what the people have got to do. You can't go small potatoes. You can't go, I'm challenging this book. You know,
No, but it doesn't, but that's like, it's a difference between an activist, like, do you want to solve a problem or not? Activists are like, you know, they've got like St. George and retirement syndrome. They'll keep, you don't, on some level, ask yourself, on some level, do you really want this to go away? Really ask yourself this.
Right.
And if there's any point of no, because understand, listen, they take away, so my mom tells this story, this is really important. Human beings reduced to their utility is a feature and not a bug of this system. Every person has dignity, a sense of purpose. Václav Havel talks about this. In your own internal dignity, you don't want to not feel like you have a purpose. But they're treating people like they only have a utility. You know, all this talk of, people are going to be useless eaters. They're not going to be out of a job. As if you yourself could not have the capacity to find something to do with your own damn time. Are you kidding me? That's absurd.
SEL and a lot of the papers that talk about it talk about how SEL is going to help, and this is what the WEF wants and UNESCO wants, is going to help figure out well in advance, they think they can do this, where these kids can be plugged into the global economy.
Listen, I wish my mother was on this, because right now she would be, if she's actually watching this live, she's going, oh my gosh. First of all, that's how the system worked in education under the Soviets. They would put you into a pattern, to a thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, in some ways, this could be good, because I'm getting emotional about this only because, look, there are ways to stop this. The why doesn't matter. Fully understanding it, we can go back after you're done stopping them. Then you can look at how did they do this, and you can make sure they never, ever, ever do it again. But the way you stop it has to be precise. You have to use precision. And our system right now is in place, and there's enough there that you can. I mean, I'm sorry for getting so passionate, but I am...
No,
look, I mean, listen, I used to go back and forth to Romania as a child, and I've heard stories from my mom about what was done to people. And my mom fought like hell so that I would never let it happen to me. And I'm not a parent here. So I know that it's exhausting. I know it's a big fight. So be like a surgeon. Find it. Cut it out. How do you do that? If you've got a bunch of people who are basically being funded by illegal 501c3s. I know there are lawyers out there. I know there are CPAs and accountants.
Don't be intimidated because they have a pretty website.
No, but listen, a CPA is not going to be intimidated by a pretty website. A CPA knows what they're doing. Go in there, bring it to the courts. And even if you get no, thrills or anything, because listen, these kids, they're rolling over your kids with a tank. That's the equivalent. That's what they're doing. And it's not, it doesn't matter if everyone understands it. No, parents who don't understand this, we cannot wait for you to understand this. Right. Just stop it. Because
I want to quickly do talk about the brainwashing thing. Yeah. Now, just for those people who might be wondering, like, where are you getting this from, Deb? This comes from this paper, Brainwashing. I'm sorry, I didn't pull up the right thing. Here it is. Brainwashing and Thought Control in Scientology, The Road to Ron Droid. Okay?
By the way, while you read this to them, got so emotional, I have to excuse myself to pee. So I'll be right back. Keep going and I'll catch up. Just 2 seconds.
Read this to them. Okay. So what I did was I went through it and I pulled out things that are relevant to this conversation about SEL. And I know you're probably going, but the socialist realism, look, the socialist realism is just a way of saying they are destroying reality. They call it socialist realism, but what it is they want to reinvent reality into this non-real delusion thing. And we saw with the dancing and only some people, and the hero is toil, and toil is, unthinkable outside the collective. But there's brainwashing going on. And I say this all the time, and I get pushback from the audience. They'll say, oh my God, they're not brainwashing them, because you picture a dark room with a single light bulb and somebody is like torturing someone. But we see evidence of brainwashing in, for example, Scientology. We know this happens in cults. But I want you to understand that the core active elements in SEL are no different. Brainwashing is defined as the process of causing a person to undergo a radical alteration of beliefs and attitudes. I just showed you the SEL chart, right? Not me. I don't matter. The collective matters. That is a radical alteration of beliefs and attitudes. First of all, children are self-centered to start with. It's natural. It's appropriate.
It's a survival mechanism.
It's a survival mechanism. Those boundaries they have, their attachment to you, the parent, or their trusted caregiver, is a survival mechanism. Their self-centeredness is a survival mechanism. Orienting them starting at the age of 3 in some cases towards the collective is actually breaking down vital boundaries they need to survive, to recognize and trust their own eyes and ears and senses, okay? So when we put somebody through a radical alteration of beliefs and attitudes, even that are developmentally inappropriate, that is by definition brainwashing. The brainwashed person is conditioned by punishment for undesirable beliefs and rewarded for expressing desirable beliefs. Now, again, that doesn't mean a beating. It doesn't mean torture. Punishment can be, oh, try again, do it again. Everyone else is going over here to play or do this thing. You need to do more work. Do the work. Tell it again. Fill out the form again. Yay! Let's put your name on the sticker on the board that you have positive behaviors. We're going to put little popsicle sticks in your cup. No popsicle sticks in your cup. That's the same thing. Why does the woke penetrate so deeply in society right up to the White House? Because they provide black and white answers to the questions of life. And these are the core elements of SEL. Then this guy, Robert Lifton, I'm going to show you, he wrote a book. Robert Lifton identifies 8 features common to all forms of what he calls ideological totalism. And the book is, this is where I got this, okay? Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. But I pulled them out, and with some help from an expert who has studied both SEL and Robert Lifton, I got this information. Again, I have all these wonderful people who help me who shall remain nameless. Milieu control, safe spaces, racial segregation, the black group, the affinity group, the white group, the Asian group. Okay, that's milieu control. Mystical manipulation, the unseen scene, microaggressions, unconscious bias. That's mystical manipulation. The demand for purity, there's no debate. One side is correct, and it's the anti-racist side. It's the non-white side. It's the lived experience of the people that aren't you.
And also, one quick question, though, with whiteness, I want to point to, I just want to encourage people to recognize when they're playing the identity politics game, they're actually doing something else. Half the time. Don't buy into it, because I don't believe, like 99% of the time when they're talking about whiteness, all I hear is white army. So you're not part of the people. It's not like, listen, as a Jew, right? I can't keep track of which side I'm on which day. All right? And I think it's hilarious, and it makes me really happy, kind of, because I'm like, okay, none of this is real. As a woman, I can't keep, as women, can you keep track? Are we women today? I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. Because, like today, supposedly because I was born with my, womb, apparently because, I was born with a vulva and I didn't, do the work to attain it. I'm not a woman.
That's right. And then we have, of course, we talked about the demand for purity, the cult of confession. You have to admit your racism or privilege before the collective, and you have to keep doing it. You're never done. The sacred science, change gender at will, hierarchy of race value, intersectional theory.
And again, like, listen, here, I think that you've got the Maoist approach where he said, the follower of Mao said, I don't care if the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice.
Exactly.
So this will, according to Partnost, change when necessary. It will keep changing.
Yes,
that's
and James
why
Lindsay talks about that all the time. This is not you think you can learn it. You think you can stay it. Guys, I've been at this for 3 solid years of studying and trying to bring this information to you. And you can go back to videos that I did 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I sound wrong because it's already changed. It's already changed.
And the language doesn't matter, and the why and the data doesn't matter. That's why I say again,
loading the language. Inclusion equals exclusion. Diversity equals oneness. Equity equals inequality, and it's forced inequality because nobody can really be like, oh, you're white, we have to discriminate against you so we can have equity. How does that's not any kind of equality?
Well,
or
that's
even
what's
equity.
really disturbing about that is that the reason self-censorship is so terrible and censorship is because we think language allows us to come up with things. We think we are a language creature.
We think in words, most of us.
Well, even those who think in images share on some level. We communicate in language,
right?
You know, and that language allows us to develop new ideas, and that language allows us to express them, share them, modify them, change them. If they take our language away and remove it, it is now. Let me remind people: Mao was a poet. He knows this. Yeah. Let me remind you that the same people who fought back were not politicians. They were playwrights, artists, poets. Look at the landscape of the people. You have mathematicians. You have writers, some performers, comedians. If you think there's a political solution to when they're coming at your kid with a tank to roll over it, you are absolutely wrong. The best thing you can do, no matter what they said, sit down with your kids and read to them.
Absolutely. And read to them from like classics, not this struggle literature,
Listen,
SocRealism
whatever
crap.
you loved as a child, or as later as an adult, sit with your kid and watch movies you love. Don't worry so much that they're not going to understand. Don't let them suddenly fill your head with this belief that everything is meaning something else. This is why once they take away this belief and this and fill everything where you start to doubt everything you see and that you find no joy in any of it. I mean, there's this exquisite quote by Eugene Ionescu that I feel like I have to share with you guys because I keep wanting to say, like, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but what I'm hearing here is such an old thing done. And I just want to say to parents, it's like the way you stop it is by basically being like, you know, remember in the movie Labyrinth, you have no power over me. You have to teach your children that they are born free, that they are in and of themselves not perfect beings. They aren't going to be perfect. Neither are you, which you will eventually, like, I'm 44 and I'm only getting this now about my parents that we have more in common than I thought. Like, it's weird. But we're not animals, you know? I mean, yes, we are in the animal kingdom, but we're human beings. There is a divinity that created something about us that makes us precious. Right. Whatever that divinity means to you. I mean, as Jews, Deb and I do not have an image for God. So we don't sit there and imagine that it is, but there is something that makes a, you know, even scientists will say, and, you know, this whole mechanized approach to society, it's not real. It's not. Like, you can be an atheist and know that. That's you right. Can be. But, you know, so this Ionescu quote, he talks about childhood, okay? And this is what he says. He says, childhood is the world of miracle and wonder, as if creation rose bathed in the light out of the darkness, utterly new and fresh and astonishing. The end of childhood is when things cease to astonish us. Right. They are destroying the most precious, brief time in our lives. That's right. That we have no business letting them. It's 100%. And honestly, I hate to say this, but like Solzhenitsyn says, we keep saying, it is they who do this to us. It is they who are harming us. It is they, but it is not they. It is only us. And that sounds mean. And I'm saying, it sounds like, look, get out of the blame game here. Get out of the, oh, I did, or no, I've been fighting. But it's irrelevant. These are your kids. These are your kids. Like if you know what I mean? It's like if you accidentally trip or you don't, and suddenly you accidentally trip your kid falls in a river. Or somebody pushes your kid into the river. What are you going to do first? Go and yell at the guy who pushed your kid into the river? Or stand in the mirror and goes, oh my God, I pushed my kid into the river. No, you go and jump into the freaking river and get your kid.
That's right.
And like, and I'll dare say this, this whole idea that politics are downstream from culture, utter hogwash. Culture is the stream. Politics are the embankments. Unshackle from that and just be a parent. Just be a parent. Your kids have no business getting involved in politics at a young age. I think if it's child abuse, flat out.
I totally agree. I did a show, I think it was 2 Mondays ago, about a school district in New Jersey where they're putting on a play, Seussical. You're probably familiar with Seussical, musical. Now, the kids were offered a list to vote on, and they didn't choose Seussical. They chose Legally Blonde. But the school overrode the vote and chose Seussical. And then they called the students in for an early I'm going to get rid of this. Hold on 1 second. They called them in for an early Saturday morning rehearsal. And the point of the rehearsal was, let me see if I can get this here. If I can pull up this one screenshot. Because this absolutely blew my mind that this was going on. Here it is. Okay. I don't know if you can read it, but what it says is, it says, in response to the negative stereotype illustrated in Seussical, we decided to change the Wickersham monkeys to Wickersham Sneetches. Now,
sorry,
look at this little girl. Look at this little girl's face. Okay, so the child, I tried to explain to the audience.
No child would have occurred to them that a monkey was racist. No child thinks that way.
Or that it was stereotypes related to humans at all. And what?
No, nothing. It's a monkey. It's a monkey.
So what the kid is now wondering, I'm thinking, I mean, maybe they may not consciously be aware of this, but now
is a Wickersham? Is it the Wickersham that's somehow a stereotype, or is it the monkey, or what the heck is a stereotype?
It's their claim is that the monkeys.
I know.
You know what it is.
I know, and that is absolutely one of the most racist ideas I've ever heard.
Thank you. But what the kids are now going to walk around, now imagine being a black child in that group of kids, but what the kids are likely to walk around with, even if it's subconscious, like they're not cognitive.
Which school in New Jersey was this, by the way?
Rosa Middle School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So what a kid is now going to be wondering is, if monkeys are not monkeys, if monkeys could be stand-ins for something else, and I need an adult to tell me that, or I might run afoul of being a racist, then I'm not going to make a decision. I'm going to wait to be told what everything in art is.
You know what? You know what somebody should have said to these kids? Not my circus, not my monkeys. Let's go put on the show.
Seriously. But they had to sit through on a Saturday morning, this person explain.
Who is that person?
This is this is like the drama teacher.
Okay, I've taught kids theater. Your kid, and I say this to every parent right now, there is nothing that is immune from this. If your kid is being taught by a teacher like that, you yank your kid out of there as fast as you can and you find them something else, or you teach your children to say no to them. I got all my money back, literally every single dime back from NYU Tish, when a teacher threw a book at my head because the teacher claimed that the Doll's House was 3 acts when it was 2. It broke my heart. I thought, I was so depressed. I was so hurt by it. But I first went into the department and I said, you're going to give me my money back. Why? It's cheaper than a freaking lawsuit. You teach your child when it comes to this stuff. That woman right now, I'm looking at her and I can't even tell you what I'd like to do. But she has no business directing children, has no business teaching them, but definitely no business having this art form that is one of the oldest art forms out there, which is theater. And look, that girl is heartbroken because I bet that girl on the front left there probably was playing a Wickersham monkey.
Possibly.
That's the look I see in her face. Whatever it is, she's so confused.
That's right.
Or love the book. That's why they do it. That's right. And I'm telling you right here and now, I'm so upset by this because it is not enough to wait for these people to get smart and get their shit to start. Listen, I could not go to the theater in New York. I had to leave New York City. I pled with artists. You cannot wait for them. You can't. You yank them out, find a parent, direct it yourself.
And this
Don't
was the
take this
title.
from them. Don't
This
take
is
this
what
from
they
them.
showed. Imagine walking in on a Saturday morning and this is what is shown to you as a middle school kid. Middle school. So they're 11 to 13.
If anybody knows
Monkeys-
the name of this woman, I would love to write her a letter. I'm not even kidding. Please get it to me.
I mean, this is insane. And
I grew up in New Jersey, by the way.
This is crazy. And so what I'm saying is, when we tell kids something isn't what you think it is, and there's a hidden meaning in everything, then we're back to this. We're back to.
But that's true though. See, hold on a second. That's part of that mystery in childhood. There is a hidden meaning in everything, and nothing is necessarily what you think.
But it's not for the
but
adults to tell you.
Well, they're manipulating this, is what is so
Yeah.
horrific about it, and they're imbuing into kids something they don't have. And it's these children, these people are quite literally abusing kids.
That's what I've been saying.
And it's cluster. I mean, this all I see right there is a covert narcissist who should be fired immediately. This is why unions have to go. If this woman still has a job in a month, it is the fault of the parents. Any parent who's listening to this right now, if this teacher is still doing this in a month, you have to hold yourself responsible.
That's right.
Because it's no different than, let's say, any parent right now, and you have to, I'm going to be tough on you here. If you sit there and wait, I mean, if your child is being molested, do you sit there and wait for the molester to suddenly get a new conscience or to be re-educated?
Right.
Or have you become that caught up into this nonsense? Is it because you're afraid? Are you afraid, really afraid, that somebody's not going to like you? You're their mother and father, or maybe just a mother, or maybe just a father. But I'm sorry, like, you do get together with other parents, put the show on, do it in spite of them, have them do 2 shows, do that one, and then do it right. Have them enjoy what's the difference. That's what Power of the Palaces is about. When you build a parallel pulley, when you do it, people will see it and they will go and they will do it themselves. You don't need to wait. And it's exciting and it's joyful and it's great.
Just like, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't matter if it's bubbling, and it doesn't matter if it's just you alone in your dining room or you and your.
Doesn't matter, dress the kids.
Doesn't matter.
Use string and pipe cleaners. It's anything is going to be better than that.
Thank you. And that it kind of brings us, we wanted to sort of make sure we got to Václav Havel, and I definitely do, because what struck me in this, I mean, and we don't have, obviously this is like 40 pages, we can't go through all of it, but
I printed it out too. Which section are you looking at?
Yeah, but one of the key points in here that stood out to me was just the greengrocer part that you
talked
about
yeah.
on Twitter. And because it really captures what I think is going on right now. So we've got,
can I make a suggestion? Because the greengrocer stuff is on Twitter. Section 9, okay. Begins to start talking about what to do about it. Okay. And
the only reason I mentioned the greengrocer is it talks about how he's just putting this political slogan in the window, and Václav Havel asks, like, what is going through his mind when he's doing this? Is he doing it because he genuinely believes in this slogan? Is he doing it because he wants to communicate something to the outside world about his values and his beliefs? Or is he doing it more likely because it showed up with the vegetables, and this is what we do? We put up the thing because everybody else puts up the thing. Put on your mask, get your Fauci ouchie, go to the we genuflect to the art.
But it's even darker than that, because as he explains, in reality it says, my name is Greengrocer XYZ, and I do what I'm told to do because I am a coward.
Yes.
If it said that I am XYZ, I am parent X, I'm going to be tough here. I am parent XY, and I don't get involved because I am a coward. And I do not believe that I can actually show my child how to stand on their own 2 feet and push back against the big bad wolf, who now tells me that they're not the wolf, that they're actually a chicken or the grandmother. And I'm not going to have to do this because I just want to have safe face in my community because I am a coward and I'm afraid. Now, granted, of course you are. And they all talk about this. That's what they know. I mean, they all talk about this. But here's the thing. You have dignity. So of course you're not going to say that, but that's what you're doing. And once you realize that, and that if you just don't even turn from it, and the fact that everybody's standing up and pushing back has started to dismantle this and is actually pushing up against the automaton of totalitarianism, and you are doing amazing work, and it's exhausting, and keep going. and look for people to stand by you. But there's a section at the end of this that I'll read it. People can go back and read the rest of this themselves, but I think people need a little hope here, right? They need to know what they can do. And so who is Václav Havel? Václav Havel, I'm sorry for interrupting you here. It's just that I know these things can be so exhausting, but I feel like we have to say, all right, so the guys are, now what? What do we do about it, right? And if you go to section 11, it's all the way at the end, you have to click on the read full essay part at the bottom. Now.
Oh, wow. Tiny print.
I've got it printed out, so I'll read it,
Hang on a second. 11.
Okay. Listen to this. So right before, so a little bit before, okay?
Okay.
In section 10, he says, the post-totalitarian system is in only one aspect, a particularly drastic aspect, and thus all the more revealing of its real origins, of this general inability of modern humanity to be the master of its own situation. The automatism of understand, he wrote this in the 70s. He became the first president of Czechoslovakia, okay, after the Soviet Union fell. He was a playwright, and he also was the originator of the Prague Spring. The automatism of the post-totalitarian system is merely an extreme version of the global automatism of technological civilization. The human failure that it mirrors is only one variant of the general failure of modern humanity. This planetary challenge to the position of human beings in the world is, of course, also taking place in the Western world. Now, he can be seen in images at the World Economic Forum, but he was not on board with it, any more than Trump was on board with it. You see? And I'm going to jump ahead. Solzhenitsyn describes the illusionary nature of freedoms not based on personal responsibility and the chronic inability of the traditional democracies as a result to oppose violence and totalitarianism. And then he starts saying that democracies are what they're supposed to do, but he says, I see a renewed focus on politics, on real people, as something far more profound than merely returning to the everyday mechanisms of Western, or if you'd like, bourgeois democracy. I felt that our problem could be solved by forming an opposition party that would compete publicly for power with the Communist Party. I have long since come to realize, however, that it is not just that simple. And no opposition party in and of itself, just as no new electoral laws in and of themselves could make society proof against some new form of violence. No dry organizational measures in themselves can provide that guarantee, and we would be hard-pressed to find in them that God alone can save us. Section 11. And now I may properly be asked the question, then what's to be done? My skepticism toward alternate political models and the ability of systemic reforms or changes to redeem us does not, of course, mean that I'm skeptical of political thought altogether. Nor does my emphasis on the importance of focusing concern on real human beings disqualify me from considering the possible structural consequences flowing from it. On the contrary, if A was said, then B should be said as well. Nevertheless, I will offer only a few very general remarks. Above all, any existential revolution should provide hope of a moral reconstitution of society, which means a radical renewal of the relationship of human beings to what I call the human order, which no political order can replace. A new experience of being, a renewed rootlessness in the universe, a newly grasped sense of higher responsibility, a newfound inner relationship to other people, and to the human community. These factors clearly indicate the direction in which we must go. And the political consequences? Most probably they could be reflected in the constitution of structures that will derive from this new spirit, from human factors rather than from a particular formalization of political relationships and guarantees. In other words, the issue is the rehabilitation of values like trust, openness, responsibility, solidarity, and love, aka our founding principles. That's what he's talking about. We have it here. And anyone who's come from another country, people who talk about as peaceful divorce, I find them to be cowards. Utter cowards. When the going gets tough, the tough get going? No. Come on. And you look at this and you read what he said, read what they've said, listen to the survivors, listen to people, not just my mother, but Vera Shirov, to Cuban immigrants, Venezuelan immigrants, for all this talk of listening to immigrants, unshackle yourself from politics. Be human again. Just be human. Go demand live performance. Go to them. Take your kids to them. Get them the heck offline. Get them the heck off their computers. That's your responsibility.
So then we see people going to drag queen story hour or live.
Well, hold on. Again, drag queen story hour. If I say again, you can adjudicate that when you say that's not real drag. So we are in a war on memory here. We are. People will go to drag queen story hour now because people are up in arms about drag queen story hour. That's what gets cool. When everybody's like, oh no, that's what's cool. So you stop giving it so much fuel. Now you notice who are the first people that kept protesting against it. If you're going to tell me the woke right isn't real, I'm going to tell you, you're so funny. Of course it's real. Yeah. The woke right is exactly the same as the woke left. There is no left and right in this. There's two things. There is America, or there is the post-totalitarian shell of America.
Yeah.
America means you are supposed to be able to, I tell a story when I was a kid in Romania. You know what the worst thing about being around a post-totalitarian society was when I was a kid, when I would go to under Ceausescu? The worst thing? My mom protected me from really bad stuff. Really bad. I stayed in the best places. I loved my grandmother. I have wonderful memories. I went to a playground once as a kid, and I'll tell you one thing that's interesting about these systems. It's as safe as a morgue. So I could run around as a kid, and I could go to the playground and see my friends and yada yada. But guess what? There's other places that are like that for kids. It doesn't have to be a place like that, where people are so afraid to commit crimes that the crimes are like what I'm about to explain. Every year I'd see these kids there, and every year, it was like going back to camp, and I'd bring them Wrigley's chewing gum and all this stuff. And I remember standing there, and there was all this debris in the middle of the playground. And I knew that we could pick it up and move it. Why not? It would be fun. And the parents are there, so we could do it together with them. And I kept saying, let's do this. Let's clean up. No one moved. They didn't budge. And at first, I thought nobody wanted to play with me because I was a kid. I thought it was my fault. Now think about what I'm telling you here in the ESL concept.
The SEL, you mean?
Oh, yeah, sorry. SEL.
That's okay, because ESL is English is a second language.
I know. I'm so used to saying ESL. I meant to say SEL. I actually tweeted that. I had to correct it earlier. How about English as a ninth language? That was my mother's. I'm very pro that. I'm standing there, and I thought maybe they didn't recognize me or something. I didn't even know what it was. I just remember feeling so bad, and I kept saying it. And then I looked at this one woman, a mom, and all she said was "nu pot," and I understood that she didn't just mean we can't. She meant we mustn't. And I didn't know why, but it scared me. And I ended up just seeing this woman walking around, like, buying recycled, bottles, and she would say, "Stick legale, kumper," and hold her dress up. And so I got home to my mom and grandma and dad, and I just started, "Stick legale, kumper." I started just wanting to all I remember is thinking, I don't know what I just saw. And I found out much later that what had happened was they would have been accused of an organized whatever, or taking their job from someone else, and they were truly afraid. They were petrified of letting their kids play in a playground. And I used to tell that story as a way to tell people, America's going to be fine. Because we are ingenuity, we have ingenuity, we're get up and go. We understand the proverb, easy come, easy go. We work hard. Even when we're lazy, we're creative. We come up with things, we try. And no one moved. And these were people that I couldn't understand why that would be. And these kids wanted to play, but they didn't move. And imagine
but what finally freed the East Bloc countries was a lot of people got up and moved. So if we look at what happened in Poland, for example, even Romania, you look at these countries, there wasn't like, oh, we elected the right person and magically everything got better. Is people got up and they moved. They
Well-
started protesting. They started
Well,
marching.
no,
they
yeah,
started doing things
that's a
differently.
little bit of a myth. I hate to
It's a
tell you
myth?
that. A little bit.
What
So-
happened then? Or did they not actually improve?
Well, let me put it like this. You know that story about Ceausescu standing there, and then suddenly he sees this crowd of people, and everybody's screaming at him. So then he suddenly gets scared of the people, and then they go back, and then he gets executed, right? Because he was scared of the people. He wasn't scared of the people. He was scared of Securitate. He was scared of the people underneath him. He knew that since he had lost the crowd, what would happen to him? He had been keeping the Soviets out. These things, you have to understand a post-totalitarian system. It is not a dictatorship. This is a key. In a dictatorship, as he says, Václav Havel says, all you got to do is get somebody new in there. No. The Romanian people were under the thumb of this for a very long time after Ceausescu. The corruption continued to the point where it was so bad that people were dying in hospitals. And I think that's in part why they recognized what was going on with COVID and said no. Understand? So this idea that somehow when the people rise up and there's enough of them, no. That's not the history.
So what actually does fix it then?
Well, I think when you look at what Václav Havel and people like that say, he says the following. He says, the profound crisis of human identity brought on by living within a lie. A crisis, this is from section 9, which in turns makes such a life possible, certainly possesses a moral dimension as well. It appears, among other things, as a deep moral crisis in society. A person who has been seduced by the consumer value system, whose identity is dissolved in an amalgam of the accoutrements of mass civilization, and who has no roots in order of being, no sense of responsibility for anything higher than his own personal survival, is a demoralized person. The system depends on this demoralization, deepens it, is in fact a projection of it into society. Living within the truth, as humanity's revolt against an enforced position, is, on the contrary, an attempt to regain control over one's own sense of responsibility. In other words, it is clearly a moral act, not only because one must pay so dearly for it, but principally because it is not self-serving. The risk may bring rewards in the form of a general amelioration in the situation, or it may not. In this regard, as I stated previously, it is an all-or-nothing gamble, and it is difficult to imagine a reasonable person embarking on such a course merely because he reckons that sacrifice today will bring rewards tomorrow, be it only in the form of general gratitude. By the way, the representatives of power invariably come to terms with those who live within the truth by persistently ascribing utilitarian motives to them, a lust for power, or fame, or wealth, and thus they try, at least, to implicate them in their own world, the world of general demoralization. If living within the truth in the post-totalitarian system becomes the chief breeding ground for independent, alternative political ideas, then all considerations about the nature and future prospects of these ideas must necessarily reflect this moral dimension as a political phenomenon. And if the revolutionary Marxist belief about morality as a product of the superstructure inhibits any of our friends from realizing the full significance of this demersion, and in one way or another from including it in their worldview, it is to their own detriment. An anxious fidelity to the postulates of that worldview prevents them from properly understanding the mechanisms of their own political indolence, thus paradoxically making them precisely what they, as Marxists, so often suspect others of being victims of: false consciousness. The very political significance of morality in the post-totalitarian system is a phenomenon that is at the very least unusual in modern political history. A phenomenon that might well have, as I shall soon attempt to show, far-reaching consequences.
So
he breaks this down.
People in the audience are saying they want to know, like, well, if it's not political in the United States, if it's not right left, if it's not.
But hold on. I'm not saying it's not political. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, look, I'm saying unshackle from it. Not everything is political. Just like not every, I'm in a room, right? This room has air in it. I am breathing air. Am I air?
No.
Okay. I'm in a room. This room has air in it. Gas is starting to fill this room. It is an air as well. Am I the gas? What do I do? Do I suck all the air out of the room? No. I unshackle myself from the freaking chair, get up, and turn off the goddamn gas.
Okay, well, how does that translate to the political system?
So, well, because here's the thing. This idea that everything and every solution has to be political is the function of the totalitarian system. It gives you this belief. It says earlier on, he says this, okay? He says, we have seen that the real meaning of the greengrocer's slogan has nothing to do with the text of the slogan actually says. Even so, this real meaning is quite clear and generally comprehensible because the code is so familiar. The greengrocer declares his loyalty, and he can do no other if his declaration is to be accepted, in the only way the regime is capable of hearing. That is, by accepting the prescribed ritual, by accepting appearances as reality, by accepting the given rules of the game. In doing so, however, he has himself become a player in the game, thus making it possible for the game to go on, for it to exist in the first place. If ideology was originally a bridge between the system and the individual as an individual, then the moment he steps onto this bridge, he becomes at the same time a bridge between the system and the individual as a component of the system.
So in our school analogy, okay, because this is something I've been saying for a while, when you're busily fighting against all these people who are
you're not with your children.
SEL and all this stuff. Well, first of all, you're not with your children. But secondly, you're saying, well, I'm going to get elected to the school board. I'm going to go join the school board and I'm going to fight while being on the school board and I'm going to change things. And all I see is you're just becoming part of the system that's doing this to you.
Listen, this is exactly what he's talking about.
What opinion is. It's irrelevant.
That's exactly right.
Opinions. You're justifying and legitimizing the existence of the school board, the existence of the state system, the existence of the power that is doing this shit to your kids. You're validating it.
Listen to this. Here's a way to look at it. That's why I say, let them have that stupid show, then do another one. You see? Do one at home. Do one in your neighborhood. Do one with just you and your kid. Do a 2-person version of the entire musical with all of you playing all the parts. Just do it with them. Don't let them believe that because people are doing this to them, that it means anything. It doesn't.
Because remember, in the woke system, the victim is the toil, whatever the toil, the victim, call it what you want.
Right.
But the victim is the only virtuous individual. And actually the victim isn't even individual, it's an avatar for members of groups. So even if you turn and make your kid out to be a victim and you have to go and I gotta get other than that as a
tell your kid, say listen, you know this isn't real. Come on, what are you gonna do with it? Listen, okay, you've got to be a virtuousnip. How about this? Well, stick a monkey sticker on your head and see what happens. Is that what you want to do? You still want to be a monkey? Why not? Or ask them. Let them be themselves. The kids are remarkable. So listen to what he says here. He says, as the interpretation of reality by the power structure, ideology is always subordinated ultimately to the interests of the structure. Listen to this part. This is important. Look at the structure like an AI. This being, it's a monster. Let's talk to kids. The ideology is a monster. It's a monster that subsumes everything. Okay? Therefore, it has a natural tendency to disengage itself from reality, to create a world of appearances, to become ritual. In societies where there is a public competition for power and therefore public control of that power, there also exists quite naturally public control of the way that power legitimizes itself ideologically. Consequently, in such conditions, there are always certain correctives that effectively prevent ideology from abandoning reality altogether. Under totalitarianism, which is what we are in, you have to understand this. How deep we're in it, it doesn't matter. Your kid is in a bathtub and the water's going up to here. It's not here, but it's here. Right? Under totalitarianism, however, these correctives disappear. And thus there is nothing to prevent ideology from becoming more and more removed from reality, gradually turning into what it has already become in the post-totalitarian system, a world of appearances, a mere ritual, a formalized language deprived of semantic content with reality and transformed into a system of ritual signs that replace reality with pseudo-reality. Yet as we have seen, ideology becomes at the same time an increasingly important component of power, a pillar, providing it with both excusatory legitimacy and an inner coherence. As this aspect grows in importance and as it gradually loses touch with reality, it requires a peculiar but very real strength. It becomes reality itself, albeit a reality altogether self-contained, one that on certain levels, chiefly inside the power structure, may have even greater weight than reality as such. So think about this. The reality is that what your kids are being taught doesn't make any sense. Suddenly, that becomes less important. What reality is becomes less important than that monster that has subsumed it and creates this new reality. You're working within a false reality, trying to fix something. And I'm sorry to say this, as UNESCO, we do not have the time to take our time. How many years are your kids a kid?
I've told parents that, if you have a kid who's not yet of school age and you don't put them in the school, you've just saved 30,000 hours of your time.
But let's say you have to. Let's say you're a single parent.
30,000 hours.
But hold on a second. Let's say you're a parent and your kid has to be there for whatever reason, because there's people like that, right? What do? You spend time, put your damn phone down, get off Twitter, get off this conversation right now, get off here right now, get out, get your kid right now, and go outside.
I'm kidding.
I don't mean you, because I understand this, but like what I'm saying is that at a certain point, right? Because I think part of this becomes almost like this weird cheerleading thing. Like you're like, come on, you can do this, especially as women, right? We don't talk about this enough. As women, we have to remind our fellow women and men that we can do this. And we've been in lockdowns for so long, we have no way to turn. So you can turn to this. Think of this like a tavern. Sit with your friends, sit with theirs, and bring your kid over right now. Put them on your lap and say, this lady here, she's got, frizzy hair, weird spelling every day. How do you say, Ooana, whatever. Doesn't matter. Say, want to put on a play? Let's put on a play. What kind of play? Oh, want to play make-believe? Just do it. Ask them, what is it you want to do? Make a fool of yourself. Be goofy. Be ridiculous. Be fun. Be more fun than the substitute teacher, because that's how it used to be.
I have to tell you a story that goes back to the beginning of this show when you said if we really raised our families with equity, we would be talking goo-goo talk for years, and we'd be crawling on the ground over. Well, it's so funny you
Look
say
at what
that
some of that zers and
But here's the funny part. When my kids were little and they would throw temper tantrums, I read something and I said, I'm going to try this. And it said, your children look to you to be, whatever. So the one way to show them how ridiculous they're
is to mimic it.
And so my daughter threw a complete temper fit, meltdown.
My mom did the same thing
on the ground.
My mother did the same exact thing.
I was picking.
My mother did the same exact thing, and I looked at her and I'm like, "Why are you doing that?"
I know. My kid was like, "Mom, are you okay?"
I don't know. It was like, and you know what? That's the thing.
Fix it.
Exactly. So listen, if you want to show your kids how silly they're being, there's a time they listen. We all remember. Those of us who are fortunate, and that's the most of us. Whether it's a parent, there's a beautiful meditation in Tibetan Buddhism where you think to your benefactors, right? You think to your benefactors, anybody who loved you. Everybody has somebody who loved them. And you imagine them giving you loving kindness, and you remember that, and you put it through you, and you exude it out. Put it through your, love your children. No stranger can love your children the way, and honestly, any stranger calling your kid kiddo,
that's how I feel about it too. I hate it. It's like,
kiddo could be I've called I've called adult kiddos in to be brat, but if you call a kid a kiddo, that's endearing, and you better know that you are able to do that.
That's another one of the breakdown. They're breaking down the
they want your children. Of course they do.
Yeah,
of course they do. And this is nothing new. This is nothing new.
But I just want people. I brought you here because I wanted people to understand that first of all, there's a history. There's a long history. It speaks through the arts. The arts, as you pointed out, the arts were one of the instruments.
Take your kids to good plays
for totalitarianism, but they're also one of the ways that we get out of it because the arts connect us to our humanity.
Make them watch plays they don't want to. Sit them down and make them watch black and white movies that they don't want to watch and they find boring. Because guess what? Eventually. Like, I just watched The Little Prince. It's a 1970s film with, Bob Fosse. And, we had this video. Limit, get your kids, limit what options they have and have their entertainment be a little bit more limited and have them see certain things. Put it on. I watched that movie again. I had to move away from my parents. I was filled with so much love for my mom and dad and so much gratitude to them. It's such an amazing film. And you see so much more in it as you get older. Yeah. Have them sit there. Don't sit there and put up an iPad in front of your kid and let them browse alone. I would sooner put a TV in my kid's room and let them watch whatever the heck they want than I would ever give them access
to the internet.
No, because they have no business knowing how to browse that way with that much action. And they could stumble over something. And I don't mean anything obvious. I mean, listen, there's much more dangerous things than seeing things that look obviously pornographic or scary. Kids, I mean, my goodness, we know instinctually, if you don't want to watch it with your kid, if you don't want to watch it, why are you letting them watch it?
Exactly.
I don't care what it is. If you find it grating and annoying.
It could be cartoons.
Absolutely. If 100%. You find it annoying.
You are what you eat.
Every parent that bitches and moans about this program that their kid loves to watch and they can't stand it, they don't want to hear it anymore.
Caillou.
I mean, right?
Teletubbies.
Oh, that was the first one I noticed. I'm like, what is this?
Oh my God.
All right, but how about this?
Nope, this ain't happening.
If every parent, because listen, parents now want to put their kids on, having them do their renditions of Baby Shark. What happened to Rainbow Connection? Or, songs that were made, take your kids to see great music, expose them to quality, expose them to classical music, expose them to the masters, talk to them about it, show them what you loved or love. Show them. If you don't love what they're watching, if you show them what you love, no, but only that they will love watching you love something. And then there's going to be a period of time where they're going to be like, oh, Dad, whatever. But it'll come back. I guarantee it.
And it's normal. It's completely normal.
But it will come back and they will and they will remember it.
Yeah, you do have to, but I think being aware of this undercurrent within art, within entertainment.
They have to know it exists. This is another thing. My mother raised me with something. This very much she instilled in me. She wanted me to know that these things existed. So she took me to the opera. She took me to these amazing places. She took me. It was up to me to determine whether or not. But children, they look. This is why the destruction of New York hurts me so much because if a kid doesn't, it's some of these institutions where we really have to push back harder. But take your kid to the redwood forest or to great, take them to natural phenomena that are exceptional, things that will remind them and fill them with awe, have them see in themselves and in them, get them in a fast car you love and strap them in tight and go really fast somewhere it's safe. It doesn't exceptional, anything that is exceptional, not just the mediocre and the mundane, because that's the thing these people are really good at. They're really good at taking the mediocre, elevating into positions of power or somehow superiority, and then sustaining
sad beige. Have you seen all the sad beige?
Yeah,
the
I'm
sad
living
beige toys, the sad beige.
Listen,
toys.
I'm living in, I don't know what happened to young people, but supposedly all the places that people want to buy, they have to have gray walls and light floors. It's a little bit too IKEA for my taste because we're not all the same here.
It's just so bland, and I just believe that it. And even you
but
look
that's
at the
not
new
what they
windows
want.
going up and the new,
but look, I'm sorry, moms out there, stop using your kids as designer handbags, please. Go buy a designer handbag or go buy a fake one. They are not your designer handbag. Stop getting gear for your kids as if it somehow reflects on you. It doesn't. It only does in your little clique. Get over it. We're not mean girls anymore. If you ever were one, stop it. Just grow up. Be a mom. Don't live through your kid like that. It's not right. And my mother didn't understand peer pressure because she came in and looked. And I was scared to death of my mother.
Peer
pressure. She was not my friend. I was angry at her. But thank God, my mom, your kid is not your friend, people. They're not your friend. They have to trust you. That is not, how many friends do you have that you don't trust? I can tell you, I got quite a few. They need to trust you. They don't need to be your buddy.
That's right.
Because you're not going to trust, if you have somebody who's your buddy, your relationship to your kid is so much beyond that. They have to know that
you got their back.
I mean, anybody here, I'm sure if you miss your mom or dad, let me ask you guys a question, just like, because I'm an only child and, my parents are older and I miss them so much right now. Even when we fight and yell, I miss them so much. I know that even at my worst, which I would never show to a friend, I can be at my worst with them. And they will love me and they will know me. And they will know what my potential is. And they will know that I should strive to be worthy of what they see me as. And if you let these people who are so mediocre.
Oh my God, so mediocre.
And judge them. You should.
Of the worst go
judge
into this
them.
Field, let me tell
judge
you.
them. Be judgmental because that's showing good judgment. I'm not telling you to go out there and smack them in the face. I'm not telling you to be mean to them. This is one of the things I can't stand about what's going on right now. People are being mean without being kind. I'm not asking you to be nice. Don't be nice. Be kind. Being kind sometimes is looking somebody like a person, that freaking terrible person who did that to those kids. It is not nice. It may be nice to be like, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is appropriate. That's not kind, though. Kind is, how dare you instill in my child your racist idiocy? How dare you do that to my child? That's your job.
It's funny. I'm actually very proud of myself listening to you talk because I was that mom.
Good.
When my eldest daughter was in middle school.
Snaps. Wait, for Legally Blonde. Snaps for Deb.
And they had, it was after one of the horrible school shootings, and I don't remember which one. Don't ask me. There have been a few. But she was in, I think, 7th or 8th grade in an IB school here in Charlotte. And they decided, the students all in the whole district decided to do a walkout for gun safety. The students decided to do this. Obviously,
I'm sure the students decided to do this.
To do it, right? And so,
maybe they didn't have enough activities. Like they couldn't,
right.
Why not give them?
I found out, it made the papers, that the district was going to allow it. The district was going to support it as a district. It wasn't going to be this thing that the students did independent, like, well, we're going to support it because of safety. They were going to do it anyway. So we're just going to organize it and have it be all organized. That way we can monitor the safety of the kids going out of the buildings, coming in the buildings, whatever. And I called the superintendent and I got a bunch of blah, 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 blah. So I said, all right,
let me ask you a quick question though. Kids who didn't want to do it, could they still go to school?
Oh, wait, my daughter was one of them. So I go to the school that morning and I walked right in there and found the principal and told him right to his face. I said, what you're doing today, what you're allowing today is outrageous.
Yes, it is.
And then I proceeded right to his face. He's looking around. I said, there will be students in this school right now, today, who miss out on whatever class would have been held at that time because you're allowing these kids to march out for something that a subset of the kids believe in. But the rest of the kids who don't know enough about it or don't believe in it or have no idea what's going on.
All the cool kids are doing it.
Are going to feel pressured to do it. You're giving permission to this kind of thing, this kind of behavior without understanding, mindless following. And you're not teaching anything except how to misbehave, basically.
But also what they're also doing is they're being lazy as hell.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Very easy.
I said that. I said, what kind of example are you setting by claiming they're going to do it anyway? So what else are they going to do anyway that you're just going to let them do? Where does this end? Do you not have any adult backbone? And he was just like, right? And I'm speaking loudly. Meanwhile,
so that resignation, by the way, is a feature, not a bug, too.
Administrators are milling around. And they're looking at him like, do you want us to get you help? Because the little 5-foot tall woman is yelling at you. Should we call security? I went outside after he said, well, the kids are walking out now. And I live streamed the entire thing to my Facebook that day. It was a different account. You can't go find it, unfortunately, because I had to take that one down. But I live streamed the whole thing. And don't you know, they were wheeling out kids with cerebral palsy. They had the aides for the special needs kids wheeling them out for the protest. The people who had signs and all this stuff were the teachers. There were teachers in the front row and a few kids. You know what the rest of the kids are doing? Milling around in the middle, talking, looking at their phones, dancing, singing.
I saw this in New York, by the way.
This was absolutely ridiculous.
You know what?
And
I said there's a
parent.
picture.
I was the parent they didn't ever want to see coming.
I'll tell you something. One of my favorite moments in New York was I saw a kid dropped a sign that said toddler activist. And I had a parent going to pick it up. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, these are people, in my sense, half the time we have a bunch of adults who didn't get to do something when they were kids. And this is what they think they wanted to do when they were kids. I don't know about you guys, but if I was told, hey, listen, we're going to bring in, the opportunity for you all to like dance and throw, here's one. We're going to let you come into school with your, if it's a summer day, wear your bathing suits, cover the slip and slide with baby oil and cover you with glitter. And, I would rather that. You could slide on there with glitter. Anything. People are living through these children thinking like, look, we're turning everyone into Greta Thunberg. It's sick.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really sick.
It's
and
part
like
of the program. It's part of the SEL.
But listen, you have to remember that just because you can have there are some crappy parents out there. Are you going to be the parent just because so-and-so's mom and dad says, yes, and it's one thing, yes, you can drink at home. Then there's the other parent that says, come over and drink and I'll serve you. Right? Like, you don't do that. You don't be the parent. There's liability reasons you don't do that, right?
Right.
So start being... Look, parents need to stop worrying about being liked.
And even by other parents.
That's what I mean. That's exactly what...
And listen... Being liked by whom?
Look, I'll tell you something.
That they're so intent on being liked by.
I would love to hear somebody like my mom one day talk to you about some of this peer pressure stuff. Because I remember being a kid and she used to be like, I don't understand this. Because she didn't there was no word like this. And she didn't care if the neighborhood moms and dads liked her. Because, listen, it was already tough. She had a thick Hungarian accent. Look at the way they talked about Melania's accent. My mother, so much heavier. My mother, my mom and I learned how to read together in English, right? And so the fact of the matter is, was it always easy for me as a kid? No. But your job as a parent is not necessarily to have your kids have it's almost different. If you have the best childhood ever, I'm not talking about safety. I'm not talking about unhealthy things here. But if you have the best childhood ever and you're the most popular thing in the world, it only goes downhill from there.
Exactly.
Right?
It's, like I said, I wanted you to come and explain to people how.
I feel badly because I know I'm not a parent, but I'm like sitting here listening to this, and I'm as much as I want to be.
It's important for people to see that there are connections. I can talk about SEL till I'm blue in the face, and of course, every day I run across someone who says, "What's SEL? Is this something I need to know about? What is it?" I'm like, "Oh my god!" And then there'll be people who say, "SEL is good. It's good. It teaches them. Don't you want kids to have social skills?"
Sounds like we're dealing with a lot of mean girls and narcissists out there. Straight up, Queen Tamora's left and right. But I'll tell you,
ignorant. They're ignorant of you're sending your child to school every day. You send them into the care of other adults for 8 hours a day, and you don't know what's going on in the building.
I'll tell you this much. I don't know if this will help. I keep trying to rack my brain now of as somebody who's not a parent, what can we do? There's not all of us. This is not always a choice. You understand? And so what I'm thinking is for those of us, and it's not my position to impose anything because I'm not the parent and I wouldn't do that.
Well,
but those of us, but I'd say though, what I'll say to parents though, to approach those of us who don't have children, if there is something that we can do, whether it's, I don't know, offer to, give your kids a little lesson. You have so many friends who are experts in certain things. I'll teach Shakespeare to some kids, or whatever it is. I think if we all came together and just said, rather than, and I know I'm being critical here. I'm not being mean. I'm trying to be kind and tough. But what I'm saying is, ask us for our help. I don't want to impose if there's stuff we can do. I'll do it.
Oh, but I don't know. I don't know how to. When's the last time you actually asked anyone for help? Now, the number one thing that people need is help with childcare.
Okay.
People have to go to work and they see school as childcare. Or it's certainly the stand-in for childcare. Now, I'm not really sure what people do in the summer, but I mean, this is none of my business.
Listen, I'll tell you something. There's a lot of women out there, especially now. We were sold a bill of goods and we missed out on something, especially now after lockdowns. There's a movement I've even heard, in some communities you have, aunties, right? All you need to do is ask. There are some of us that would love the opportunity to be part of a child's life as an aunt and be trusted enough to be able to do that and earn that trust.
Right.
And you have to find those people for yourself.
Build community.
But not only building a community, look at the old models that existed in countries. It's never been like, even in urban environments, it used to be that a community would help raise a child. Like you would see a kid behaving badly. If you see a child misbehaving, don't turn around and say, it's not. No, because then suddenly, I used to see this all the time in New York. People are like, it's not my business. And I'm like, don't you understand? A child wants to be told no.
Right.
They do. Part of learning and building confidence is understanding the strength of our restraint.
Yep. The thing is people really need to, first and foremost, they need to understand what you said, where there's only one childhood. Your child gets one. That's it. It's very short. It's the shortest part of their life. The second thing that you need to understand is you are the guardian of that, no one else.
That's right.
You are the guardian of that. There is no one else who's going to care as much about your child or about their childhood as you. No matter what anyone else tells you, no one else knows what's best for your child. In fact, I would go so far as to say they're not completely wrong that you don't know exactly what's best about everything, but you don't have to know what's best about everything. You just have to love your child.
Let me ask you a question. What happened? What I don't understand is what happened to parents, and I'm asking you sincerely. Is it a loss? I know that in Judaism, especially, it's said that, the mother names the child because the mother knows their name. They know who they can see who they're going to be before even they can. Now, can we peer review this? No, but we know this. Inherently know this.
I jokingly tell my youngest that she told me what her name was from the womb.
But you
goes,
also
how'd you pick my name. I'm like, well, you told me your name.
You can see it, and you're not telling them what to do, but you can start to see them as what they're. And I'm asking you this sincerely. And is there anything we that don't have kids, or we as artists who don't have kids, in theater, what can we do? Because I will never know. I'll never know. I can tell you
one thing that helped contribute to this hands-off parenting with all the devices. Because people waited a longer time to have kids, and I was one of them. I didn't start having kids till I was 37. That
was my mom and dad's. That was my mother's.
Yeah.
Age.
So they're already, and it's a trend now. There are child-free restaurants, child-free this. So you can't go. There's adults-only hotels. There, children.
My parents took me everywhere.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, especially in more urbanized areas, it's becoming quite fashionable and quite acceptable for people to have zero on airplanes. You hear about it all the time. Absolutely zero tolerance for a child even being there on the off chance they might cry, they might misbehave.
That's absolutely excruciatingly horrible.
I've watched parents be bullied by people just because their kid, when the poor little 2-year-old on a plane wouldn't put on the mask, it was like, I can't get the mask off. And it was like, get your kid off the plane. They removed these people from the plane.
I saw that. Masking children, I will tell you right here and now. Anybody masking your child, don't you ever do it in front of me.
I have watched parents, and it comes in all there's the parents who let their kids do all kinds of crazy stuff. And then there's the parents who are so petrified that they'll take their baby and go, here's the phone. Here's the phone. Here, play with the phone. Do something. Here, be occupied so you don't cry. So everybody in the restaurant doesn't give me the evil eye. And
so are you telling me that people are forfeiting their role as a parent because they're afraid of being uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Grow up. I'm sorry.
I agree with you.
Grow up.
You're preaching to the choir.
I know it's blowing my mind. It's really blowing my mind.
Being agreeable and being being agreeable, being acceptable, not standing out in any kind of negative way.
So, I gotta ask a question here.
Ingrained in us for so long
So-
that if you do it, look, I'm a person who doesn't do any of that crap. Okay.
Of course
I was
not.
always an outsider. But when I tell you that even though I was comfortable doing it, being the outsider, being the person who took my kids everywhere, etc.,
It sucked though.
I still know what it feels like to have people be like, "There's that mom." The mom.
Oh, that was my mom. Listen, that was my mom.
Never talk to you. Oh, mommy groups, mommy boards. Some of
Run,
the
get away.
Bullies, the worst people.
No.
Absolutely ever. So here's the problem: you have potentially great parents. And you have absolutely awful,
And they become unthinkable outside the collective. They themselves do.
They have ways now that they never used to have. It used to be like, I graduated high school. Bye. I never have to see you, mean girls.
Get the heck off Facebook.
Thank you. Now we move places. We move to a new subdivision, or we move to a new town. We're so mobile. We go follow the job. We go wherever we go. We land in a place we never lived. We have don't know anybody. Our parents are however far away. We got no siblings. We got nothing. So we have to go, like, I need to find friends. I'll go join the mommy group. I'll go to the club. I'll go to the book club. I'll go to the gym. And who are the people very comfortable immediately populating these places? Either people who live there all their lives,
Mean girls.
they have their little clique, or the mean girls. And so you have one of
We
two
have to
choices.
talk about Mean Girls, man. Sometime.
I and my family are going to be like loner outliers where we are here until we find some people who are also loner outliers. Then we're going to congregate together and be awkward loner outliers together. Or I'm going to tailor myself to the group and I'm going to fit in. And tragically, more people than not do that. I'm going to tailor myself. Another story, when my daughters, I put them in a charter school away from the regular public, thinking charter would be better. And I quickly found out what an indoctrination center it was. Yeah. And I started going through, I'm not even kidding you. I don't usually do this political thing, but I went through I looked up their names to see who had ever donated to a Republican candidate ever, thinking maybe I could call them on the phone and see that we'd have something aligned. No, there were some, but I called them. There were maybe 10 people.
And they got mad at you.
It's not a very big school. I called them up. I said, I'm concerned about this restorative justice. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, me too. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, I hate it. Oh, it's crazy. Will you come with me? I want to have a meeting with the head of school to talk about how toxic this is, how pernicious and influences this for our children. We even one of you, every single person. Oh, no, I couldn't possibly. Why? Why won't you join me to just have a conversation with
So can I tell you what I think?
I don't want to stand out. I don't want to rock the boat. Oh, there'll be backlash.
There's two things you said here that really struck me, having been raised by a European mom. Like, it makes us a little different, right? One of them is, anybody who thinks that, all the people who look up to European society and they think, first of all, don't wait for a place to be family friendly. Bring your child. Yeah. Bring them. Have them sit with you. Teach them. I have the story. My father used to tell me, and we were not wealthy, but he brought me to the plaza just to expose me to it and told me that if I sat there and was a good girl, I'd get my picture on the wall like, I forget her name, Eloise. Now, of course, when I finally realized this wasn't the case, I was like, you lied to me. I was upset about it. Yep, exactly. But I appreciate what they did now. But guess what? Your kids are going to get upset at you. Get over it.
Right.
Right. So the things that are really terrible are these things that are trying to tell kids that they don't get over it. But also, just like, here in St. Petersburg, this sounds really funny. I see kids around quite a bit. There's, family friends. It's a lot more European. It's just like there are dogs everywhere. There's kids everywhere. Just bring them. Don't wait. And if somebody gets upset about it, if your kid has a bit of a melt, get up. You find a solution. Figure it out. You can be embarrassed.
I would just get up and leave the restaurant temporarily till the kid calmed down and bring him back.
If you want,
I didn't sit there like a rude a-hole and be
my
like,
bet,
oh, sorry, you all have to wait for my child to have a temper tantrum.
My bet is that a lot of parents, but I bet my parents like adult-only spaces because they don't want to remember that their kid's not with them. And guess what? You can be okay with being uncomfortable and missing your kid and doing a little bit of me time. And if you feel guilty or you feel embarrassed or you feel jealous, that's between you and you. Don't, right? Just don't.
The problem is we've got this whole, we could do a whole other show about this and we've already gone 3 hours. We probably should stop.
Oh my God. Have we? Like, I don't have the clock in front of me.
But we seriously, but seriously, there are so many roots of this. The bottom line point is parents need to find themselves again. Like if you want your children to be independent, autonomous, people who can resist this garbage, especially if you really truly believe you have no choice but to drop them off at that building every day where the people behave in these crazy ways and talk about racist monkeys, then you absolutely must use every spare moment of your time when they're with you to fortify them and fortify their own sense of self. And that starts with you. If you don't model that, if you don't model going and making new friends and talking to strangers and taking them places and being brave and sticking up for yourself, how do you expect your kids to do it?
Look, the drag queen story hour phenomenon now just opened an entirely new dimension to me. You need to do better than they're doing. They're actually showing you something, and the reason the kids are liking it isn't because of the drag queens. They're with their parents. Take them to what you like. Take them to golfing. Take them scuba diving. Have them learn. Have them watch. Take them to work. Remember, take your kids to work day. Kids just want to see you and want to be with you and want to learn from you. And if they don't want it, like I used to go every Thursday with my dad to a chamber music concert. I didn't like chamber. I still to this day find it a little bit dull. And he loves opera. I don't love opera, but I listen to classical music. Don't say, what do you want to listen to in the car? Play for them things and show them things that they won't discover in the world because they can't access it yet because they're kids. Right. And don't worry about it if it's not for kids. If you take them to a movie that's violent and rough, talk to them about it. They're not going to be traumatized forever. If you take your kid to a drag, so I grew up seeing drag. I did. But it's not drag what they're doing there. But if you expose them, I remember my parents took me to Las Vegas and they were playing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony disco and there were topless women there. It was not traumatic. I knew that I shouldn't run around topless, but we are not, stop treating your kids like the world is treating you, that you're dumb. Your kid's not stupid. You're not stupid. You can talk to your kid.
And there is a difference between the sexualized stuff that we've been seeing, and what would be like RuPaul, right?
Oh, I mean, 100%. Because it's not even. But listen, but I'm not even talking about RuPaul. Even, I'm not. That's not really what drag is. We could do a whole other thing on that. Drag is something else. Drag is, they used to call it female impersonation, right?
Correct.
So you would dress up not as. Look, there's a reason they never would do Audrey Hepburn, but they would do Katharine Hepburn. Right. There's a reason why they would dress up like so. If I watch a drag performance from Chris Pearson from I think that's his name is problem, and it's him dressed up as Katharine Hepburn. He says, and I just moved to St. Petersburg from New York, and it's Katharine Hepburn done and he's fully embodying this, right? And he says, I'm a 9 o'clock girl. Sorry, I'm a 12 o'clock girl in a 9 o'clock town. I will laugh my butt off. Why is Tootsie funny, right? There is an art form to this. Why was it right? Or why was it okay for me to go to Vegas and all I'm seeing in Vegas are the huge, things, and I'm listening. All I remember from that is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and disco. That's what I remember because that was Beethoven, and it opened my eyes to Beethoven. Right? We used to have like little Mozart for kids. I mean, I don't understand how we went from. Even our supposed elites who we claim are setting the standard, they're not. Most of the people who are setting these standards, I mean, if the gay men hadn't died of AIDS, so many of them had survived and lived to see what these women are taking their kids to. I've made a joke with a friend of mine who's gay, and I said, I want to do a parody about women who are running around turning gay men into designer handbags, like a Lynch novel. Because that's like a really freaky Lynch movie. Because listen, this is not normal. It's not. Mm-hmm. And just because you have your gay best friend, ladies, no, this is not gay men. This is not who these people are who you love. This is something else.
Yeah.
And don't let them do that because look,
and the school teachers who are telling you that when you want to get books like This Book is Gay, which teaches the middle school kid how to set up a Grindr account, amongst other things, that's if you don't want that book in the middle school that you hate gay people, they are being
but guess what? Doing that stereotype of gay men, okay, that is homophobic.
Thank you.
The idea, the gay men talking about
what I've been saying.
Exactly. Taking a child to drag queen story hour where drag queens are playing like that. if you don't know anything about the history of gay culture, you are feeding into a stereotype, a horrific stereotype that I was part of fighting against, that killed people. People now, they don't know what gay bashing is. They have no idea. They have no idea what it was like for so many gay men to go. And you know what? Now that people are coming out of the closet, you know what? If you have a child who's gay, talk to them about it. It's not all beds and roses, guys. I mean, think about it. I have gay friends, adult gay friends, many of them, who struggle for the same things. Like, I don't have to, we share this in common. And it hurts.
Yep.
All right? In a way that I cannot even articulate.
But you also wouldn't want the teacher talking to your child about that.
But it's because it's not their business.
Yes.
Look,
exactly.
look, if a child is talking, if a teacher, you should raise your kids that when a teacher is talking to you about your private parts, that is, I know they keep calling the word, I'm not even going to call it, that's assault. No teacher should be talking to your 6-year-old about whether they have a PP or a VV or whatever the heck you want to call it. That's not their place. They can help them go to the bathroom and not pee themselves, but that's not their place. And anything more than that, to tell your kids, and they know this because here's the thing, they go after your kids to get this reaction.
Yep.
Don't give them the reaction. Just tell them, don't. And you don't have to explain. You don't need to go to a class. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to say anything other than, get your goddamn hands off my kid, and you get out. That's it. Right. And if enough people did that with a teacher, with one teacher, if enough parents did that, and if they don't, who cares? Go in and say, your teacher's been doing this. I demand another one.
Well, that's the thing is, I see a lot of people go to the school board meetings and they get up and they're well prepared and they have speeches.
Doesn't matter.
And they have all this stuff. I mean, I just want to see 10 moms in a row going, stop talking to my child about sex. Stop talking to my child about sex. Stop talking to my child
about... Or not even talk about sex. Basically, stop talking to my child. Because once this person talks to your child about sex, will you have them talk to your child about anything else? Stop talking to my child.
Right.
Like,
and they'll say, well, I have to talk to them. How am I going to teach them?
Stop teaching my child. That's what I'm saying. You keep saying that. Don't try to. It doesn't make any sense to me. Look, if a person is molesting your child, I know, but if a person is molesting your child, do you say to them, stop molesting my child and wait for them to stop molesting your child? No. I'm really bewildered by it.
And it's pointing a gun at my head.
like you don't want to do that, man. He already is. You know how I got the gun off my head? You want to know the truth? I looked at the guy and I said something very inappropriate because I was dating a guy who was from Holland and I made a joke. And I looked at the guy and I said, what are you going to do, Euro trash? And the guy laughed and took the gun off my head.
Oh my God. That's brilliant.
Because I wanted that gun off my head. And that was the point. I made him laugh. And he took it off. He didn't take my watch. He didn't take my bag. And the guy also never replaced the necklace that was ripped off my neck. So, So, I mean, I made a bad decision to be with that guy, but I learned a lot in that moment.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing is we keep wanting to be liked at the expense of our lives. And I'm not saying this lightly. I mean, we saw this in New York with the whole fiasco with the girl and the dog in the park. And, oh no, she's going to, are you kidding me? It's like, ladies, when did we stop? Like, when did we become so, and men too, sorry guys, but when did you want to be liked so much that you started to worry about making a mistake more than surviving? I don't understand this.
Well, it's when people started going, I'm going to record you making a mistake. I'm going to own the narrative.
So, it's funny.
Own the memory of the event.
That's fine. Here's the funny part. I remember this. This is really interesting. The first time I ever made a video at all. It was on Facebook. It was in 2020, I think, around there. And what had happened was there was a woman with a man on top of her missionary style at the subway. He was attempting to rape her. Doesn't matter. What is it? It's not like in a movie when the moment of penetration is like, Wah! No, come on. That's not how it works. I know. So the fact of the matter is, this man's on top of her. She's on her back. Guy's on top of her. Everyone is surrounding her, and they're saying, stop it, don't do it. And he stops. And he stands up, he shows his hands like this and goes like this and walks off. Now, I'm looking at this, and people are saying that somehow they thwarted a rape. No, they did not. The New York that I knew, that man, not armed, bitch is like, I would have walked behind him and kicked him in the balls. That's what I would have done. That's what I would have done. I know that I would have done that. Any man could have done that. And when I said this and I was doing this, well, because the man happened to be black, and this is insulting to black men, the response that I got was, oh, well, if they did anything, he would be called a racist. Okay, not only is that insulting to human beings in general, period, on top of it, oh, I'm so sorry, you'd be called a racist, poor baby. The woman was being raped. Poor baby. You're gonna be called a bad name. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Remember? Come on.
No,
we gotta all grow up.
I think people have forgotten, tragically.
Like, let them call you names. And then you know what? The people who love you and the people who have your back, you know, some of the most amazing people are the people who are so-called canceled, and then they come back and they become uncancelable and unethical with. Because it wasn't doing it alone. So people surrounded them, and they stood up and said, like, if you go in there and somebody starts yelling at you, 6 more parents join them and say, get away from it. So stop teaching my kids. Oh, you're right. Stop talking to her that way. Get away from my kids. Then get away from my kids. You build. That's the group. It wasn't people marching on the street. It doesn't happen that way. It happens at home with your kid, with your spouse, with your neighbor, right? A neighbor has, you know, a BLM site, fine, whatever. If they start telling you, you know, why don't you have a trans race friend? Look at us. Why don't you have an American flag?
Right.
All right. Well, I don't care if you don't. It's not my business. I'm gonna keep walking my dog. You but you don't owe people an explanation.
See, but this story, you probably saw that video of the 17-year-old that attacked the teacher because the Nintendo Switch was taken away. Okay, there's a couple things about that. I mean, we could go do a whole show about it.
Well, I want to know why. I want to know why no other teachers came in. I want to know why no other students stepped in. It's not like you have to be afraid. Listen, if we have to create a thing of fear, we've got Red Guard already. That's Red Guard.
That's exactly right. And there's so many things. You know, even it was finally thwarted, but
she still got the shit beaten out of her, and that's not right.
She did, and the kid said he was going to kill her before this incident ever happened.
So listen, in New York, they just passed a law that if a child is arrested for anything short of murder, they can't press charges. Now, these are bigger problems, but again, you just saw you saw something happen outside of your home. It has nothing, sir, it has nothing to do with you and your family. You don't have to worry about that until it happens to you and your family. It would be like me saying a woman was just raped by a gang of people in Bangladesh. Therefore, I live in a rape culture. You see?
Right. You just don't, I mean, I wouldn't send my kids to a school where, you know, this kind of thing is allowed.
Well, but if that was in your school district, it's a different story. So if I was living in Bangladesh, that would be a different story. When I was living in New York and 6 women were raped in the course of, 6 women in the course of 6 months by 6 different men during the day, I left New York. You understand? I'm not saying to you that this thing doesn't suck. What I'm telling you is it's not your business to worry about this. It's your business to make sure this doesn't happen to your family. Right. That's your fight. Like women, the trope of the woman, right? The hero woman is a woman who's standing there with the child in the air, their foot on the serpent, right? The hero man is the man who comes in while the foot is on the serpent, it cuts the serpent heads off. You don't need to run around chopping off the heads of serpents on a LARP, online, in your fantasy world. You deal with the serpents in front of you. Don't, be a hero to your children. Be the hero that when your children think back, you would want them to think of you as. Not now.
Yeah, because they're not going to go, oh yeah, my parents went to the school.
Oh, they might go crazy about it, but you're the parent.
They yelled into a microphone. And
listen, if that's your kid, if you're the father of that kid, sir, and I didn't see your name, so I can't see anything. So if you're, sir, if you're the father of that kid, that's a whole different story. But you're not.
Right.
If you're the husband of that woman, that's a different story. But you're not. If you're her brother, you're not. Father, you're not. What you do, ignore that and get to work.
Yep. I agree.
Right? And I say this.
I don't even
and
have kids in the school system, you guys.
I don't have kids, period, which means, when I'm not directing a play, but I'm, listen, part of why I do what I do is because it's my way of trying to say, listen, I get it. I do all this reading, hopefully, so that you guys don't have to do it.
Yeah. But I really appreciate you spending all this time with us and sharing your thoughts and your wisdom with us.
And I thank you for giving me the opportunity. And there's a lot I learned here.
I really appreciate it because, like I said, we stay in our bubble of I'm talking to other educators and other parents and all that. And the one thing we forget is that all of this is connected.
By the way, I've done some teaching. I never told you that, but not in a public school system.
Okay.
And I never did it, formally. I mean, I've tutored kids in writing and in Shakespeare and directed the kids. And this is part of why I was fascinated by it. But this is exactly why I didn't go into the system. Because as a teacher, and this is all the teachers out there that I'm going to say something here. Don't think that the only way you can teach is by becoming part of a system. It's almost like saying the only way you can go into nursing is to go into a place that is masking and hurting children. That's not it. Create parallel poli. Be the medic. Think of this as a war. Do what you got to do so that they have no power over you. You don't need to wait for them. And and that old little Mr. Rogers thing, look for the helpers. There's so many out there. And don't fight the battle. Don't fight the dragons that aren't in front of you, because it gives you this weird, and we've all been there. I mean, I know I was there, especially in lockdowns, right? You can feel like a dragon, and sometimes you're leaving breadcrumbs, right? But if you're going to point to every single reason why not to do something, listen, for every million reasons, and maybe there's only one reason to do it, that one reason to do the right thing, what is the right thing or the other thing, and you could lose, especially men out there. God, you guys are wired for that. It's a beautiful trait in men. I mean, it's such an incredible, be that, right? And women, encourage it.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do, right? I mean, I know it sounds hokey, but go back to the classics. Go back to the basics, right? Go back.
Do it.
Read the hero stories. Show kids hero stories. Go back. For every time somebody says to me, oh, listen, I know it's a little bit of a... Man, listen. Mean girls are something you've never understood. They're terrible. They're everywhere. Just don't listen to them. Don't empower them. And they never stop. Clearly. But take your kid. Yeah, but take your kid out.
Exactly.
Play Dungeons and Dragons with your kid. Remember how bad and naughty that was? It's super fun.
And the movie's coming out too.
Oh gosh.
And whatever you do,
watch Puss in Boots 2.
See Puss in Boots 2.
Absolutely. It's such a great. I bought it. It's such a sit with your kids and watch Puss in Boots 2, and then I apologize because they're going to really want a Chihuahua.
That is true.
It's so true. I want a Chihuahua. I really do.
That movie made me want a Chihuahua.
Oh, it made everybody. If I ever saw a Chihuahua like that, but by the way, this is Maxine. Have your kids with animals. This is my Maxine. And she loves watching TV, and she loves watching Puss in Boots too. Watch the old classics. Look, Disney may suck, but the old movies, don't let them go away. The older ones, watch them. If you have to get a subscription, listen, you know what? We all get stuff, we all have Cobalt in our phones, right? Let me tell you one quick thing about what it was like under the Soviets dealing with Securitate and stuff, right? I'd be on the phone with my grandmother. I'd say something, I get in trouble. My grandmother, we'd lose the line, or my grandmother sometimes would have her hot water turned off. I would sit there on the phone and say to the Securitate all the time, be like, hey, you really should be doing something else with your time. I mean, how are you today? Or, when I saw this guy, my mom tells me this story, and I still remember this. We get off the plane, and there's this guy with the machine gun. And I'd never seen that before, because prior to 9/11, this wasn't going on. I walk up to the guy, and I'm like, why do you have a gun? A gun just hurt our president. And listen, I'm in northern New Jersey. I'm not saying that guns are all bad, but the gun standing there for no good reason reminds me of the guy who went and shot our president. This makes sense in a child's mind. That the gun is not going out there to protect somebody. It's standing there to scare the Kubajushi out of us. Why? So I got up there, and my mom's like, Ooana, she goes, listen, he has a family. He's got kids to feed. I'm like, oh, okay, good. Our bus was filthy. That's a job you can go. Go clean our bus and put the gun down.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Right. And think about this. My mother let me do this in Soviet Romania because kids, Listen a second. If a kid walks up to the girl person who tells us that she can't be like, I know that my friend Stacy, who is black, is not a monkey, and I think you're being stupid, and we're gonna be monkeys because we know this isn't racist because human beings are not monkeys, and I think that you're being racist because you're reducing us to monkeys and animals. She'll be like, out of the mass of babes, man. Let the kids
I wish
fight.
the child had said that. That seriously.
But listen, let's find those stories. I bet you they're out there because I'm telling you something. Part of this is to make you feel resigned that you can't do it. What I think would be the best fight that people could do, start finding the stories where kids are fighting back. Start finding the stories where, I remember starting with Gen Z, these were coming out. Stop being so scared for our kids that we stop believing that they can stand up and fight for themselves. And when they do, stand there, smile at them, let them be the voice, walk on out of them and be like, go way to go, kid. You know, I wish I could have done that. Thank you for teaching me that, right?
Exactly.
Why not? But also my mom made sure, of course, that I was also, you know, not going so far because they were watching me like hawks, right? You know, like,
yeah.
But they also didn't protect me from seeing that thing at that playground, and that, you know, it stuck with me a very long time. I'm glad they didn't, but don't. Look, the next time, I'll tell you something. The next time carbon zero, I think, is going to make COVID zero look like a cakewalk. The next time they start to take your kids out of schools, the next time they start telling you to mask your children, the next time they start taking your childhood away, you say no. And if you don't, I'm sorry, but I want to live in this world too, and I don't care if I'm not a parent. You keep doing that, and when your kids are going to be the ones taking care of me and have no empathy and are psychotic, I'm going to have to blame you. Not the people who told you to mask your kids.
You're very kind. Because I have much darker thoughts of what I might have to do to their children if their children.
Well, listen, I just said I would have to blame you. I didn't say what I would do to them. Yeah. But I won't not going to blame myself.
I've actually had to reconcile myself with that. I used to, you know, there's certain thoughts that you never think, right? Or you think this won't ever apply to me. Like you watch a movie and be like, I'll never have to do that.
Listen, I'm seeing it everywhere.
I have things. And I just think like, oh, God willing, I'll never have to use them. They're just protection. I'll never
listen,
use them.
I'm going to tell you another
thought has crossed my mind more in the last 3 years.
Listen,
that the likelihood of my having to use them has gone up a lot.
Let me tell you a story. Yeah.
The likelihood I might have to use one against somebody who's a teenager or young adult.
Of course. Much higher now. And it's horrible.
It used to be zero. It's now
it's
zero.
Much higher. I know that. Listen, my mom, I'll never forget this. And I was embarrassed at the time. And now with listening to everything and knowing what my mother had been through, I understand her much better now in this world. So I know she fortified me with some things that I'm trying to pass along. And I'm going to say it's not, you know, she, by her behavior, has taught me things. She used to say to me, Ooana, do not worry. If you live in, if we become a social country, I will teach you how to survive in it. She doesn't have to teach me anything. I already know. And that said, I want her to teach me more. Right. You understand? Right. But that said.
Well, let's hope.
But let me finish the thought real quick.
Stand up.
Let me finish that. No. Well, tomorrow I want her to teach me more. My mother's in her 80s, so I want her to teach me every day. I miss her. Okay? But here's the thing. I remember being in a grocery store. I don't remember what somebody did to me, but I remember that somebody spoke to me in such a way that was not. It was a man. I remember not feeling comfortable. So my mother was an athlete. She was a trapeze artist, so she did solitaire. She was very strong. He spoke to me some way. My mother went up to that man, picked him up like this, from the collar of her neck, lifted up in the air and said, "Don't you dare ever speak to my child that way," and dropped him. I'm telling you, ladies, that's not being a Karen.
Go mama.
Stop being a mama bear. Stop being a mother. You're not a mama bear. You're not a bear. You're a mother. You don't have to call yourself a mama bear. Be a mother. That's it. You know, there's a word in Hungarian. It's édesanyám. It's untranslatable, but it means my darling, precious mother, essentially. But it means more than that. You have to be your mother, the mother. And for fathers, I'm not a man, so it's harder, but I'll tell you one thing I know. I've got a phenomenal father. And I am very much a daddy's girl, and I love my father very, very, very much. The best things he did with me was show me what he loved. That's the number one thing he did. And all I want to do with him are the things I know he loves. That's it. And that's all I want to do.
Yeah.
And so, as somebody, I'm not a parent, but I'm a daughter. And I'll tell you, if my parents didn't do what they did for me, my mother didn't have a daddy. She lost him when she was 6. My father really didn't have a mom. But they both gave me what they didn't. So if they could do that.
That's right. Yeah, if traumatized people, that's the other lie that you're being told, parents, is that your children have trauma and that because they have trauma, they can't learn and they can't unless and until they do all this SEL work, whatever. Well, you've just heard a story from a person whose parents were really traumatized. I mean, come on.
My father was made, listen, my father was made in America, and he had a mom that was not, she was in many ways a trailblazer, but in many ways a trailblazer for this kind of stuff. You understand?
Yep.
So what I'll say is, she got divorced when my dad was 6 and he was born in 1940. So that's a very unusual thing, right? Now, some people would be like, oh, women, no, that's not. My mother's father, she saw him in the Black Valley Gulag before he was taken to Pitesti. I mean, she went through hell. And do they have trauma? Yes. Are they difficult sometimes? Yes. Do I have moments where I'm like, oh, dear God, I've been through it. Like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm dealing with children. Yes, of course. But they're my parents. And so nobody's going to be perfect. And, if you can give your kids, I have my closest friend here. She lost her father when she was 6 too. He was murdered. And I see so much of both my mother and her in same age. But she is exceptional. She doesn't sit there and say, she'll say to people like, don't you tell me that I have undealt with trauma. You can't say real trauma, the real thing. There is nobody outside of you. And I know this from having gone through trauma therapy. You have to get there. Nobody is going to do that work for you, especially not somebody from the state who is run by an organization by Randy Weingarten. I'm sorry. It ain't going to happen. You're delusional.
Will traumatize you.
Look, Dr. Jill Biden, are you kidding me? Come on, ladies, get with this here. We're looking at these women. We're letting these women who we instinctually know are the kind of women that when we were young make the show Mean Girls look like a funny show. There's nothing funny about Mean Girls. Nothing. And some of them never grow out of it. And now we got men acting like Mean Girls, and dudes, come on, get with that. Just get some fraternity, hang out with some boys and drink or something.
But for real, they SEL is the thing they tell the parents. Your kids need it because COVID traumatized them.
They did no. They traumatized their kids.
Thank you. But even so, even if they did, traumatized people can learn. Whoever said traumatized people can't learn?
Somebody who doesn't know how to learn. Look, I once wrote this in a poem, and I think it's a really simple thing. So beware those who teach well but were not taught well, because they will never see themselves relocating the chains that were on them back onto you. Have your kids, listen, sit down, read Self-Reliance by Emerson. Help your kids get through it. If a kid says to me, TLDR, too long, don't get to read, sit with them and make them do it. And keep doing it. Yeah. And honestly, the star is not the word. If anyone here has ever learned anything that was really difficult and they suddenly have that moment, because it's that uncomfortable moment where you're like, I can't get this. There's no way I can get this. And suddenly, something happens. In that moment, that's the reward. 100%. Have your kid do that. Like, have your kid geek out on something. Have them figure out what they're geeking out to that's not trans ideology or not being an otherkin. Seriously, women, you don't need your children to be your therapy animal. Like, your emotional support animal should not be your daughter Sue, who's now decided it's a kitty cat named, Whiskers. That's freaking freaky. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? Just stop. Like Bob Newhart.
Certainly not virtuous. That was art. That was a little thing we call humor, which it's trying to die. I hope it doesn't.
It won't.
I may before I go to bed go watch the latest Lavelle Crawford and see if I can laugh myself till
I don't know who that is, so you have to send me a link because I need some good laugh.
He's funny. He's a black comedian. He's very funny.
Send it to me. I need a good laugh. Hey, you've got great taste.
Hopefully
you told me about
good.
Puss in Boots
Hopefully
too.
he hasn't gone off the reservation to,
Watch Puss in Boots too.
I might do that too.
No, I mean
Well,
other people who haven't because
I know
gazpacho.
everyone everyone needs to
Gazpacho.
see it. Everyone needs to see it. Everyone.
Gazpacho. Rub my belly.
Rub my belly.
Rub my
Yes.
belly.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for being a great audience. Thank you so much,
You're
Ooana,
welcome.
for joining
No
us.
problem. And if you guys do want to help out, I'm going to be starting a GoFundMe
Yes.
for Rhinoceros very soon. It's go visit radioorchid.com.
RadioOrchid.com.
And follow me on Twitter and you'll see me more. And it's if you want to be a producer, you can be.
And what I want you guys to also do is there's a link in the description box down below. You can go to her YouTube, and on the YouTube under her description is everything. You can go to the, I think it's the GoFundMe as well.
It's actually not there yet. It's not there yet.
It's not
but
there
it will
yet.
be.
Okay. Look out for it, but definitely please support her work. And if you are in the St. Petersburg area in June, go see.
It's at Coastal Creative downtown. Come check it out. And please put into the notes, if you haven't yet, the links to Vaclav Havel's.
I will.
I think that's one of the most important things. And
I will do. Yeah. They're up there in the chat too. So when the live chat is up, again, if you're watching this on the replay, it's already up, but it takes overnight, I think, and then it'll be up. But
yeah, I apologize. I can't see the chat on my side, but it was a pleasure to be here, guys. And Deb, you made me laugh as always, and thanks for having me. And I hope we do this again soon. And
me too.
And I hope that when we can look back on all this and being like, guys, wasn't that a crazy time?
I hope I live that long.
Hi, like I keep saying, I don't see any reason why we can't have it end now.
Exactly. All right, guys, have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.